Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Willoughby. Coming off a very eventful weekend, Matt, we have been driven back into the garage. I know, like last week, we were posting pictures of our courtyard setup to the Discord, and the consensus was that it was like just about the coziest place that anyone could think of to make a podcast, which made me happy because I love that courtyard. I think it's cozy as well, but can't be out there tonight. It is raining, and so we're back in the garage where it still feels pretty great, and we can still hear the gentle patter of the rain on the carport, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the gentle patter of rain is one of those deeply ingrained childhood memories of comfort. So always good to get a little bit of rain, especially in Texas where it hardly ever rains.
Yeah,
we are routinely in drought. So, rain is good. We like rain.
Yep. The cozy vibes are still here. Matt, there have been I mean, it's not like we took a week off or anything, but there have been a lot of things that have happened since the last time that we recorded an episode. I mean, we spent this weekend in Austin with other notable Willoughby sibling Jackson, as well as a few other friends and family members. We went to watch the Formula One race, which we've been doing every year. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, the Formula One race was great. It was one of the best races of the year. Unfortunately for us, our favorite drivers, plural, didn't end up winning, and one of them got disqualified. So, you
hate to see that.
Yeah, it just, it happens.
Yeah. And then like elsewhere in sports world, which is not a sentence that I am in the habit of saying, but
I know I really like this sports interested.
Yeah, here I am living my life in this way right now. Rangers are going to the World Series. That was a fun thing that happened this week.
That was crazy cool.
And you know what, Matt? I think they did it exclusively because it was your 30th birthday yesterday.
It was my 30th birthday yesterday, and Adolis Garcia heard about it, and he decided to go and make the Houston Astros his and absolutely destroyed them.
So
it was amazing.
To everyone who lives in Houston and is a fan of the Houston Astros, we're really sorry, but it was for Matt's birthday, so I hope you understand. Yeah, really, I mean, it's fun. I'm watching baseball. I don't know how I got here, but
yeah, I mean, I don't even like baseball that much, and I'm watching baseball.
Here I am, and it's great. More importantly, though, you are the big 3-0. You're a 30-year-old man. It's looking good on you. Yeah. How do you feel?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I feel pretty good. I'm tired today. I had a big presentation this morning at like 8 a.m. With like a C-suite level person in my company. So I've been up since fairly early. And also, got the jitters last night, so I didn't sleep a whole lot. But
on top of us not sleeping a lot this weekend, and also drinking too much, and also eating garbage food,
and being in the hot baking sun for 8+ hours a day,
brutal.
So tired, but I don't attribute that to being 30 so much as all the other life circumstances. But no, it's good. It's good. Had a great day, had a lot of friends and family reaching out, and to everyone on the Discord who messaged me. Thank you guys. That meant a lot to me to, my friends from far away who I know virtually online. I appreciate all of you guys. And it was just a really good day, and I appreciated it very much. Felt the love. I felt the love.
We're glad you felt the love, Matt. Of course, causes for excitement on this episode abound. Not only did all those wonderful things happen, but we get to welcome back on the show guests that we always love having back on.
But it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Not the longest gap ever, but we caught up with this wonderful person back in our Tears of the Kingdom mini season. She sat out Phantom Hourglass, which was probably smart on her part.
Definitely for the best.
But we're happy to welcome back to the show Sam, aka Nintendo Fangirl. Sam, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thanks.
So, just out of curiosity, because we haven't really had a chance to chat at all about what's gone on with the podcast since we had you on to talk about Tears of the Kingdom. So between Tears and this game, we played Phantom Hourglass, and that was not what I would call a high watermark of our experience with the Zelda series so far. I'm just curious. Where are you at with that game? Just like brief synopsis, does Sam like Phantom Hourglass?
I actually really like Phantom Hourglass.
Okay, cool.
I worked really hard to get my all gold ship, and I'm proud of it.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
It's like such a short, easy game, and I enjoyed it for that, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. We talked a lot during that season about how the way that we play games for this show, breaking them up into weekly chunks and like just, playing them little bits at a time, maybe does a disservice to some games versus others. And I don't know. I think that there are some things about Phantom Hourglass that I would have disliked regardless of how I was playing the game. But I do think that the format maybe contributed to that just a little bit. But the stylus controls just never really clicked for me, and I don't know. It was just not my favorite experience so far. But we always love hearing that there are people out there who do really enjoy that game and have fond memories of it. It's a really nice thing. Opinions are subjective, and it's nice to know that yours is different from ours.
I can't ever say no to a game with Lineback. He's adorable.
Is he in more than one game?
He's around. I don't know. I can't think of it now. He is, though.
Is he in
Spirit Tracks?
No, he's not in Spirit Tracks.
No.
But did he show up?
Is he in Hyrule Warriors?
I was wondering if he was in Hyrule Warriors, yeah. I mean, if he's not, then I really feel like that's a disservice.
He has callbacks. He has callbacks in different ways. There's something in Breath of the Wild that's named after him.
Oh, that's fun. I mean, there's something in Breath of the Wild that's named after
That's true.
everyone.
They fit everything they could.
So it's like if they chose not to include Linebeck in that list, then that would honestly be like the biggest insult against Linebeck that I could possibly think of, right? It's like somehow you didn't make the Breath of the Wild cut. But no, we loved Linebeck. We thought he was actually a really fun character and probably the best part of that game. And so now we're just kind of sitting over here like, all right, well, I guess we're going to have to do Spirit Tracks at some point. Isn't that going to be fun? But anyway, so that was a whole season of pod, and it was a good time. But now we're on to Twilight Princess, which I think, you probably heard us mention in the early days of the podcast was one that we had not had quite as much fondness in our memories for as some of the other games in the Zelda series. But at this mid-ish point of the game, Matt and I are actually finding ourselves pretty taken with it, really actually enjoying it quite a lot.
See, I wonder if that's also having to do with breaking it up into being the weekly podcast, because I do think this might be one of those games that would benefit from that.
It is really nice because especially in the first third of the game, and we were struggling in those first 3 episodes because a lot of things happen in each of those. It's actually pretty full, but it was nice because it was divided up into pretty epic little sub chapters when we were playing it that way, and that gave it kind of a big, grand, adventurous feeling, which was really nice. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few different reasons for why we're loving it so much, but I'm just curious. For you, Twilight Princess, let's go ahead and do the thing where, you tell us your history with the game and where you kind of hold it in your, if you have a personal ranking versus other things, or if you like it better or worse than some games.
Yeah. So I got into Zelda not too long before Twilight Princess came out. So I got into Zelda basically when Wind Waker came out. And then did some back play. And by the time Twilight Princess came out, I was so excited. I was big Zelda fan, ready to go. Of course, it was with the Wii launch, right? So it was a double whammy of excitement at that point in time. My best friend and I, we waited outside Walmart for 20 hours. I got the worst sinus infection ever. So I got my Wii and I got Twilight Princess. I got home and I fell asleep and I slept for like 20 hours. And I woke up and I completely lost my voice. I couldn't talk. I felt like death. And so that was the intro to Twilight Princess for me. But I will say I still really like Twilight Princess. I had carpal tunnel. I still have carpal tunnel. So the Wii controls are not super great for that. But like story wise and gameplay wise and dungeon wise, Twilight Princess is probably on the lower end of top 5 Zelda for me.
Gotcha. Did you play the HD version when it came out on the Wii U, and was that like a little easier for you to get into, given that the Wiimote waggle and stuff wasn't really a factor?
Yeah, I did. And even though I complain about the waggle controls hurting my wrist, I actually was fine with them. Like, I still enjoyed going into a bunch of enemies and just like shaking for the life of me, shaking until they're all dead. So I didn't really look forward to, oh, now I can play with a controller, because I feel like there's some charm to the waggle controls still. But I also think the HD version looks great, and so it was an upgrade regardless.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like just getting even without a full graphical overhaul, just getting them into HD really does this game a lot of favors. I was actually going back this week and looking at some screenshots of the original release version on the Wii and the GameCube, and I think there are some parts of this game that honestly look a little bit better in the lower res, just because like especially distant scenery kind of stuff. Like when you can see it more sharply, it kind of draws attention to the fact that it's like, oh, this is like a GameCube era game, right? But there's a lot of stuff, especially like characters being the big one, but also like up close scenery, architecture, temple spaces that really just, they get a lot of help from the HD bump. And I've been enjoying that quite a lot. Matt and I are both playing the HD version, by the way. He's playing it on the Wii U and I'm playing it on a non-Nintendo manufactured console. So yeah. So yeah, definitely like the HD version quite a lot. How recently have you played Twilight Princess? Has it been a minute, or do you dive back into it somewhat regularly?
It's been a minute. So the last time I played it was, I want to say probably around 5 years ago. It was, let's see, pandemic happened 2020. Switch came out 2017.
Yeah, that's
right. It was probably 2016. It was probably the last time I played it.
Okay, gotcha. Because no fun games at all have come out in that time, right? Like
no.
Yeah.
You'd think that I would have just played this nonstop, but
exactly.
over and over again.
No other options. Yeah. It's actually really pathetic. Like I still haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom because I just have
No, me either.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
so
both. It's really sad, especially because you've probably had the best part of the ending spoiled for you already.
Oh, I'm sure I have. I have 150 hours. I'm pretty sure everything's been spoiled for me, and I haven't even done all of our quote unquote temples at this point.
I've got to be somewhere in the area of 100 hours, and like I've done all the temples. I'm in the end game. Like I could go do the end game and beat the final boss right now. I still have some shrines that I want to get polished off and one or two side quests. But I mean, the thing is, like that was hard enough to keep up with when we were doing Phantom Hourglass, which was just a much more svelte game than Twilight Princess. But now that we're in Twilight Princess and these gameplay chunks are taking like 4 or 5 hours every week.
It's not a short game.
Yeah, it's a lot to try and fit in. So I like every now and again I'll boot it up and I'll just pick off 1 or 2 shrines and I'm gonna beat it. I'll get there eventually, Matt. I don't need your eye rolls and your head shakes and things. I'm gonna beat this game.
You're gonna get them whether you need them or not.
Okay, well I appreciate that about you.
Whether you wanted them or not. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Destiny meme for you.
One of the best Destiny memes that anyone can ever Destiny meme. But yeah, no. So anyway, gonna get back to Twilight or Tears of the Kingdom at some point. Gonna get Mario Wonder and play that at some point. I'm actually really excited for that game, and it's just one other thing that I have absolutely no time for right now. But anyway, this is the struggle. So cool. We have a really fun chunk of Twilight Princess to talk about today. It's going to be a blast. I know that Matt and I personally have been looking forward to this section of the game for quite a while for a few different reasons, and I can't wait to get into it and talk about it just a little bit more. Before we get into the housekeeping and then the discussion about the episode, or about the chunk of game that we played this week, Matt, let's do the whiskey bit.
Whiskey bit.
Whiskey bit.
We like whiskey bit. I actually don't know what this is, so you're going to have to tell the people what it is.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, you're going to like what it is.
Well, there you go.
Tonight we are drinking Woodford Batch Proof, which is their yearly special release where they don't water it down to 90 proof or whatever. They leave it at whatever it came out of the barrel at, which in this case is 124.7 proof. It is stout.
Yikes!
It's big. So it's a bottle that tastes a little different every year. This year it's a little spicy, and I'm a big fan of it. But there you go, Matt. I poured you something from the top shelf tonight.
There you go. I love it. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to Matt. Cheers to 30.
Cheers. Yeah, that is
woof. You feel that? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
nice.
That one is that's got a kick.
Okay, cool.
Wake you up real fast. Woo! If you're tired, you're not tired anymore.
I just want you mentally engaged, Matt. I didn't want you sleepwalking.
Well, you give me too big of a glass of that, and no one's going to be mentally engaged for anything. But
I poured you a very safe amount. I feel like
that's true. Yes.
Yeah, I can't have you sleepwalking through this episode, Matt.
No.
It's too important for that.
I mean, it's also too good for that.
Way too good. All right, let's get into the housekeeping and then talk about what we played this week. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week we play a new section of a Zelda game, then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod to get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we play next, and much more. Additionally, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Adam, Sakura Sky, Art, Jeremy, Derek, Cosmic Link, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Stephanie, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Chris, Tiffany the Star, Daxel, Patrice, Stephanie, Il Maestro himself, the Giver of Gifts, Darknuck, here, actually, go ahead. Tell everyone what Darknut got you as an engagement present.
So Darknuck and his lovely wife, who runs an Etsy shop, sent me an engagement gift. And his wife runs an Etsy shop called Desert Swan with 2 N's. It's capital D. Swan with 2 N's, no spaces, capital S. And she makes wooden peg dolls. So they look like little wooden figurines that have the painted faces. And she hand paints all of these figurines herself. Mostly she does Disney princesses. But Darknuck apparently convinced her finally, according to him finally, to do a Zelda and Link figure. And they sent me and my wonderful fiance the first round of hand-painted Zelda and Link figurines as an engagement gift for our wedding cake toppers. And that's very exciting. And they're beautiful and wonderful. And thank you so much, Darknuck, and to your lovely wife especially. And if you have any interest in wooden peg dolls at all that are very well crafted and handmade, go check out Desert Swan on Etsy.
Yep, highly co-signed. These things are stinking cute. They're going to look great on your groom's cake. Darknuck, what a guy.
What a good guy.
What a good guy. All right. Didn't mean to interrupt the patron read off with that, but it felt important.
Yeah.
Okay. We've also got Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Melanie, Kolku, Aiden, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante, 1, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Ben, Daniel, Nick D_TV, Travis, Hyrule Interviews, a.k.a. Maximum Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals. And I would get shot out of a cannon and into the desert with any one of them any day of the week.
I would not, because you can't catch me dead in a desert.
You don't like yourself a desert?
No, deserts suck.
I can get into a spot of I wouldn't live there, but like I'd go visit.
I would not go visit a desert. Like Death Valley? No. Couldn't pay me.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair
No.
enough.
Sorry. Not happening.
None of us live in a desert, so I feel like,
Yeah.
you're not in danger. But
no, it's fair.
Cool. All right. Well, without further ado, y'all, let's talk about what we played this week. We do that every week in the Sacred Realms Rundown, which is a 6-part analysis of what we played this week and the feelings that it made us feel. Today, we're covering Twilight Princess Chapter 6, which deals mostly with the Gerudo Desert and the Arbiter's Grounds dungeon. Part 1 is, as always, the plot recap, this week read by me. Take it away, me. No, you get to do that.
Take it away, Lyndon.
As we turn to leave the sacred grove, we see Midna holding the dark talisman that had us trapped in wolf form. She comments on its extreme power and then pockets it so that we can utilize it to transform anytime we wish. Midna seems to be in a fiendishly good mood about using Xant's magic against him, and her smile would send chills down the imposter king's back if he were to see it. She goes on for a short while about the talisman, but then hovers over to rest at our arm and shoulder and speak sotto voce to us for a moment. She asks if we would be willing to go with her to locate a powerful and ancient object called the Mirror of Twilight, which is hidden somewhere in Hyrule. Once she describes it as our last link to Xant, we agree, and she slips back into our shadow gratefully. We turn and leave the grove with the Master Sword slung across our back, and using our new dark talisman, transform into a wolf to warp back to Hyrule Field. We decide to swing by Kakariko Village to check on our friends, and find that they all are healthy as can be expected. Ilia has not regained her memory and is spending time with Renato in the hopes of finding something that will trigger it. The Zora Prince has regained his full strength, but spends all of his time at the sacred Zora Spring praying. But Mallow really catches our full attention with the transformation his store has undergone. 2 of the Goron elders have taken up residence in or around his shop, and are helping raise money to fund the repair of the broken bridge leading to Castletown. Mallow has apparently made plans to expand his store into the town, and to free the people of the exorbitant prices that the town shops are charging. Since we have come across a buku amount of rupees on our travels, we decide to help fund this venture and maybe get some sweet kickbacks later. With our wallet considerably lighter, we head to Castletown to see if we can dig up any rumors about this mirror that Midna needs help finding. As soon as we enter Hyrule Field, the postman finds us and delivers a letter from Telma, inviting us to her tavern to meet some of her friends that are committed to helping Hyrule in its time of need. Sensing an opportunity, we go straight to the busty barmaid and she introduces us to her friends in the back room of the bar. In the back room, we meet Shad, the scholar of the group, Ashe, a rather blunt young woman who grew up and trained as a warrior in the mountains north of Hyrule, and a silent man wearing a traveling knight's gear who doesn't speak or introduce himself. We go talk to the silent man and he reveals himself to be none other than our friend and mentor, Russell. Russell tells us that once he learned the village children were safe, he came here to reunite with his old friends and to do what he could to help Hyrule. He has heard tell of our adventures and was troubled by his own inaction and ability to help. Each of these 3 knights errant are currently gathering information about the goings-on in Hyrule and have promised to reach out if any information seems actionable. The last thing we hear from the group is that their 4th member, Auru, has gone to investigate an issue near Lake Hylia, in the vast desert beyond the borders of Hyrule. We get the location from the map and make our way to the lake to see if this could lead us to the Mirror of Twilight. We approach an ancient-looking watchtower on the shores of Lake Hylia, which overlooks the vast desert on the horizon. Auru is an older man who seems to have been expecting us. He tells us that the Gerudo Desert once held a prison built to hold the worst criminals the land has ever known. Those who were sentenced to death were sent directly to the underworld by a cursed mirror that was kept in the prison. Now the prison lies in ruins, condemned long ago, and even the road through the desert is impassable. He speculates that the evil that plagues Hyrule is related to the evil of that place, and the cursed mirror that it still holds in its moldering grasp. After we tell Auru that we plan to enter the desert and seek this mirror, he gives us a note to take to the amusement ride owner at Lake Hylia. The ride is a giant cannon that can launch a person into the desert, and seeing as Auru saved the owner's life long ago, the man owes him a favor, and Auru wants us to collect on his behalf. With the free pass to the desert in hand, we head over to the floating cannon with no small amount of trepidation about being shot out of a contraption into an unknown dangerous territory. The ride owner loads us into his cannon with the promise of one free ride to the oasis and summarily launches us right over the ridge of Lake Hylia and into the brutal Gerudo Desert beyond. As soon as we land in the desert, Midna calls out in a voice that we barely recognize. She seems timid, shy, maybe even slightly ashamed, as she starts to talk to us. She recalls Lanayru's tale of the fused shadow and the tribe of evil sorcerers who attempted to overrun the sacred realm with their dark magic. She tells us that the tribe of sorcerers was chased all across the land of Hyrule and banished into another realm by the goddesses for their transgressions. This realm of their banishment was the antithesis of Hyrule's light. It was a place of shadow and darkness, as if to match the very nature of the power this tribe used against the people of Hyrule. Eventually, those who were banished there came to call it the Twilight Realm, and became as shadows themselves, unable to mingle with the light. She tells us that this is the recorded history of the Twili and has been passed down from their ancestors. She finally comes out to reveal that she is one of these Twili and connects the dots for us that all Twili, including herself, are descendants of the dark tribe of sorcerers that so long ago waged war in an attempt to take over the sacred realm. She tells us that the land of Twilight was a peaceful realm, until Zant took control of the entire land and transformed all of its denizens into the shadow beasts that he used to wage war on Hyrule. She speculates that he gained a great magical power from somewhere outside the tribe of the Twili, and he banished her from the Twilight Realm where she was unable to return without his powers. She continues the tale by telling us about the Mirror of Twilight, which her people tell is the last link left by the goddesses between the realms of Hyrule and the Twilight. She believes that this mirror that Auru spoke of is the fabled Mirror of Twilight, which was left in the keeping of the royal family of Hyrule. It is now the only way to return to the Twilight Realm and challenge Zant directly. In a shocking display of vulnerability and intimacy, she reaches up and cups our cheek with her small cold hand. She asks very meekly, "You'll come with me, won't you?" And of course we will. Not only for Hyrule, not anymore. Midna, who started our journey so acerbic and manipulative, was willing to sacrifice her own life for just a few short days ago as she lay dying in Princess Zelda's tower. The recent change of heart that our fiendish friend has gone through has helped us forge a real connection with her. And at this point, we would do anything within our power to help her, just as we did with our friends from Ordon Village. So, we smile our affirmation of help, and Midna rejoins our shadow as we set our sights on the vast and hostile expanse of desert before us. The desert is every bit as inhospitable as we could imagine. In addition to the sweltering heat and swirling sands, the region is full of worm-like creatures that burrow beneath the sand and occasionally leap out from the ground to attack. Some flying shrubberies help us stay above the ground and traverse over some of the bottomless chasms that are scattered across the landscape. We eventually come across the segment of the Northern Elden Bridge that the Shadow Beasts took and decide to replace it while we're here. We keep heading further into the desert until we come to a large fenced area that is enclosed by shoddily made wood and iron fencing. In the distance, we see some guard towers with bokoblins on top, and patrolling the ground are more bokoblins mounted on warhogs. We can't summon our trusty steed to this deadly place, so we decide to dismount some of the mounted bokoblins and steal a riding pig for ourselves. With some quick arrow work, we make room on the nearest hog and start rampaging through the remaining bokoblins. The pig is a sturdy mount, and when charging is capable of destroying almost anything in its path. The destructive forward charge comes in handy to allow us passage further into the desert by breaking through the fencing that the monsters have put up. We find ourselves in the foothills of the desert leading up to the abandoned prison, and this place is completely infested by encamped bokoblins. Even at night, we are at risk of detection because of the watchtowers all around the area, with snipers posted at each one. Luckily for us, our skills with the bow are far greater than any simple bokoblin, and we start carving through the guards with ease. Even when a stray guard spots us and sounds the alarm, we make quick work of the summoned reinforcements with the powerful Master Sword. The remainder of the way into the prison is sealed by more iron fencing, so we look around for another helpful swine to take care of that for us. The only one is in a pen nearby, but we quickly find out that it isn't alone, as a boss bokoblin steps out from the shadows of the corral. The beast needlessly and cruelly bashes the pig aside with its monstrously large warhammer and makes its way laboriously towards us to fight. As big as the monster is, he is too slow to contend with the combat moves we have been learning from our spectral master along our journey. With combinations of back slices and helm splitters, as well as some good old-fashioned slicing, we bring the giant beast to its knees. For some reason, we don't take the killing blow, and the bokoblin limps out of the pen while cursing us in its guttural language. Once outside, it closes and locks the gates and promptly sets the whole pen on fire. Fortunately, the war pig has recovered enough from its abuse to help out, and we charge headlong out of the pen and into the prison grounds. The prison stands tall against the endless sky of the desert, a circular structure of sand-colored stone with towering pillars, grand arches, and 6 structures bearing strange symbols reaching towards the wispy clouds above. The symbol of the Hyrule royal family sits grandly and incongruously over the entrance to this place of damnation. Auru was speaking the truth when he said the place had fallen into disrepair, as many of the columns that once supported a covered entryway lay on their sides, shattered under the ruthless march of time. The prison stands as a testament to the souls that have passed through this place in condemnation for their crimes against the kingdom and people of Hyrule. And as we pass under the stone entryway and into the walls, we feel the malice and hatred as if it lingered in the very stones around us. The floor is only stone in some places, and the skulls of many ancient monsters and people are littered around the cobbles. Where the floor has deteriorated, there are shifting sands and more of the burrowing worms from the greater desert. Scattered around the shifting sands are whirlpools that continually pull the sands downward into the abyss. We start traversing the prison looking for the source of the dark power that Auru mentioned, and hoping to find a way to the Mirror of Legend. The prison is not only inhabited by sandworms, but the spirits of the long-dead prisoners and guards also rise up out of the sand to challenge us. Stalfos, Gibdos, and Poes all around in this haunted prison and seek to sate their revenge and bloodlust with our life. In one of the atriums deeper in the dungeon, we see 4 large Poes come to steal the blue flames from lit braziers. As soon as they depart with their bounty of fire, the large gate leading to the prison proper slams shut, barring our progress. The first of the 4 Poes charges us with reckless hate, but in our human form we're unable to do anything about this foe, so we use the dark talisman from Zant to transform into a wolf and put this specter in its place. Once it falls, the blue flame that it stole is returned to the brazier, and so we head off to find the other 3. The dungeon that we are traversing is just as tricky and convoluted as we would expect a prison to be, and the haunted denizens bar our passage at every opportunity. The fact that the prison has fallen into ruin also makes traversal difficult, as we are routinely forced to move objects out of our path, sprint across quicksand, and avoid spike traps that are hidden beneath the sands. Eventually we succeed in tracking down the 3 remaining Poes, and proceed further into the prison. We find a large circular chamber that is lit only from ambient light, and in the center of this chamber is a sword that is at least as long as our entire body, and looks to be ancient. The sword is buried blade down in the stone, and there are dozens of ropes tying it to the ground, each bearing a slip of paper with an inscription. The blade exudes pure malevolence, and the ropes seem as though they exist to contain it. As we approach, one of the ropes snaps, and the runes along the wicked blade glow bright red. The ropes all burn away at once, and of its own accord the blade rises into the air and begins advancing towards us. Sensing the presence holding the blade, we transform into a wolf and face our opponent. We see before us a demon of enormous size, with a wicked ram's head and long flowing black cloak. The demon slams its enormous sword into the ground, shattering a line of cobblestones, but leaving itself vulnerable for a moment. We seize upon the opportunity and strike, latching onto its neck and biting repeatedly at its grotesque head. This causes the monster to shift into the real world, so we transform back into a human and raise the blade of Evil's Bane to strike this demon down. It starts flying around the room, and we have to knock it back with a shot from our bow before dodging its hefty swing once more. With the blade buried in the stones once again, the Master Sword flashes brightly against the darkness and bites into the skull of our foe. After a couple more bouts, the demon is felled, and it explodes into a swarm of flying insects that flee the prison through the ceiling. As light returns to the room, replacing the unnatural darkness, we find a chest containing an ancient spinner device, which allows us to freely traverse sand and even slot into the rails we see along the sides of the chamber. The device seems to be key to progressing further into the dark dungeon, and so we leave the demon's room to continue our search for the mirror. We utilize the spinner to traverse the tracks that are embedded into the walls of many parts of the dungeon, allowing us to travel deeper into this haunted place. The Stalfos and Gibdos are plentiful, but the Master Sword and our bomb arrows make short work of these monsters when we encounter them. Eventually, we make our way to the topmost chamber of the prison by utilizing the spinner as a gear to change the layout of the temple itself by moving walls and raising large pillars out of the ancient sands. We enter the great chamber at the top of the prison to see a large sand-filled pit with the bones of a long-dead dragon at the bottom. The skull of this great monster looks like a pincushion for spears and arrows that must be older than we can imagine. We cautiously approach the skeleton and are shocked to see Zant appear from thin air to stride upon the bones of this great beast. He bears his normal smug attitude, even though he is surprised to see us still alive after our encounter at Lineru's spring. He promises that we won't be alive much longer, and uses his dark magic to summon a greatsword as black and ornate as his cloak. He slams the greatsword into the skull of the dragon and then teleports away, as the dragon's eyes begin to glow a dull red. The skull and the remaining bones of the dragon rear up out of the sands and roar an ancient, rageful challenge. The Twilight fossil, Stalord, has waited eons in the underworld to wreak havoc and destruction once more, and will gladly make us its first victim if possible. The sands in the arena begin to be pulled inward towards the dragon's body, and it takes an opening to swipe at us as we are pulled towards its claws. Luckily, the sand isn't deep enough to swallow us, and we can wade up to the stony surface of the room. We see that there's a track along the side of the bowl-shaped indent, and so we hop on our spinner and begin to circle the undead dragon. We get the idea to attack its spine, so we use the spinner to jump off the track and make a beeline for the exposed vertebrae. The spinner strikes hard and true, and the vertebrae cracks and breaks, lowering the dragon's ribcage toward the sinking sands. As we make a run for our second attack, Stalord summons from the sands the corpses of ancient prison guards, which use their decaying bodies to block our path. Needing a different angle, we head back to the track and keep circling, looking for an opening while avoiding the spike traps that have joined us on the track. Eventually, we get our chance to destroy a second vertebrae. It looks like one more will do the trick, but the undead soldiers and spike traps are more numerous now, so we have to make multiple runs at the monster before finally striking home. With its last weak point destroyed, the body of the dragon disintegrates and the sands drain completely, allowing the resurrected guards of this long-dead prison to return to their eternal slumber. As the sands drain away, we find ourselves at last 3 floors down, but the stone platform has a place where we can slot the spinner to raise it back to the top. We spin away and find ourselves facing the door to the roof of the prison, where we hope to find the mirror chamber. As we turn to face the door, we hear and sense the evil presence rise up behind us and turn to see the dragon's skull floating in midair. The power of Zant's sword is keeping the monster bound to our plane long after it should have departed, but its rage and malice are no less diminished for the lack of a body. It attacks and flings us off the central pillar back into the sandy ground below. We use the spinner to attach to the tracks on the side of the pillar and start making our way back towards the top. The skull of Stalord meets us as we climb and starts shooting fireballs at us. We have to jump the spinner from the central pillar to the tracks on the walls to avoid these fiery blasts. Eventually, we get close enough that one more jump runs the spinner right into Stalord's face, and it falls to the ground where we can use the Master Sword to hack away at the magical greatsword keeping this beast tethered to our world. In accordance with the power of the dragon must have had in life, one round of damage even from the Master Sword isn't enough to defeat our foe. So we hop back on the spinner and start climbing once more. Stalord has summoned spike traps to impede our path forward, as well as continuing its fiery barrage, but none of these are enough to stop us from knocking the dragon to the ground once more. After a third time of being knocked to the ground, the Master Sword is able to overcome the dark magic of Zant, and the spell holding Stalord is broken. The monster's skull falls to the ground one final time and explodes. The dark greatsword is flung to the top of the central pillar where it embeds itself into the stone and then explodes as well. With the dark magic gone from this place, we grab the piece of heart and head for the door that leads to the roof of the prison. We hope our journey to this haunted and forsaken place will be worth it, and that the Mirror of Twilight is within our reach. The prison has tested the limits of our strength and courage, and only with the purifying power of the Master Sword were we able to overcome the tests it put before us. We have a renewed sense of determination to help find any way to stop Zant, however. After seeing his dark power on full display and resurrecting the giant dragon, we shudder to think what else he could do to the land and people of Hyrule. Our mission is now more urgent than ever. Even though most of the land has been restored to light, we know it is only a matter of time before Zant casts his dark powers over Hyrule once more. And so we head to the exit of the prison and hope that Midna's plan will lead us to victory.
And there you go. Well done, Lyndon, as always. We don't have you step in for me very often, but with things being busy, and last week, most people may have noticed, my sinuses have been really going crazy. And last week was not up to par of my normal oratory skills. I haven't fully recovered yet, so thank you for stepping in on the
I think you sounded beautiful last week, Matt.
I appreciate it. I disagree, but thank you for building me up and my self-esteem. I needed that.
I had to use, I didn't have to use any more vocal filters on you than I normally do. So
that's true. And there were significantly less curse words than most episodes. So there was less bleeping.
By the way, I don't know if I announced this or not, but I'm not bleeping shit anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm tired of it.
That's the cutoff point.
Yeah.
You're not bleeping shit, the
Wait,
word, or like
word
anything?
or
Oh yeah, no. I'm not bleeping the word shit.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant you weren't bleeping anything, and I was like, oh, we're about to get that E mark real fast.
No.
Oh,
Look,
no.
I don't want to go get the E mark, but also we say shit a lot, and it's really not that bad of a word, and I'm just tired of bleeping it. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
If you have a complaint, send it to uko@sacredrealms@gmail.com, and we'll see if it goes anywhere.
What if it goes somewhere?
I don't know. It's not my problem because I don't run that inbox.
Who are those people?
I don't know. It's not my problem.
Okay.
It may make its way to us. It may not.
All right, y'all. Let's get into part 2, which is our takes, where we talk about this section of the game and how it made us feel. All right, Sam.
First question. First question for Sam.
Matt's got a question.
Okay.
How do you pronounce that character's name?
That Uku?
Uku. Is it Uku?
Yeah.
Is Uku?
I think it's Uko or Oko. I always said Uku though.
Okay. Because
I think I'm not saying it right.
Phonetically, it makes no sense. OOCCOO. That's nothing.
No, I think it's got to be like a Cucko though.
Okay, that makes sense, like logically, but phonetically, it's so confusing.
I've always said Uku.
Okay.
So.
Or can we just make it Uku?
Uku works for me.
Uku works. Cool. It's Uku now and forever. To our Discord patrons, don't at me in phonetics discussion about Uku because no one knows how to pronounce it correctly.
When in doubt, nipple chicken will do in a pinch.
Nipple chicken works.
Great.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, yeah, there you go.
A little more catchy.
But for plot recaps, it's Uku.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, Sam, now that we've gotten that squared away, you are the guest of the week, so I want to open it up to you first. And just a reminder that any super specific thoughts about the dungeon can wait until we get into that section. But what are your memories of this chunk of Twilight Princess? Because this is the point in the game where a lot of stuff starts happening. We've kind of passed the intro, and the story is really starting to heat up. We're going different places, all that kind of stuff.
I think this is kind of the turning point to me where everything feels a lot bigger than it did before. The areas that we're going into are really big. The dungeon's really big. And also it's an environment that we haven't really experienced yet at this point. Also really scary. There's a lot of scary stuff coming up.
Yeah, I think that this is actually a weirdly appropriate episode to be doing in the lead up to Halloween week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
I didn't have a recollection of how spoopy this actually was, but it's got a lot of those vibes, which I really appreciated and thought was very interesting. And it's a great point that there is something extra that you get from this being the first new area that we've seen in the game in a little while. I do think that really that helps the world feel a lot more vast. Matt, I don't know what. So
I think the other part of it is that technically in this game, Gerudo Desert is not part of Hyrule. It's very specifically outside the borders of Hyrule, which is really cool. I don't know if they specifically talk about it in Ocarina of Time being outside the borders of Hyrule or not. Do you remember? We played this game 2.5 years ago, so I'm trying to.
I think it's.
I don't know if they specifically talk about it, but they definitely like refer to it as like they're outsiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say something along the lines of it's the first time that we're like outside the bounds of Hyrule in a game that also takes place within Hyrule, but I guess that's not technically true.
Well, I think it's weird, right? Because in Ocarina of Time and even like Breath of the Wild, Gerudo Desert does feel a little separate from Hyrule geographically and culturally, but also it feels kind of like there's a tenuous connection there, right? Like they're maybe not nominally a part of the kingdom of Hyrule, but there's like a relationship there, especially in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. That feels true.
They're definitely like at the very least allies.
Yeah. I wonder if it feels less like that in this game because it's unpopulated.
Well, and the other thing is it's geographically disconnected. So like in Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, everything, you can travel there on foot. You have to get shot out of a cannon over an impassable ridge in order to reach it.
I mean, you say it's disconnected, but I do think that, I don't know, it's a little goofy the way that it's just kind of stuck onto the map, right? Because
it makes no sense.
Because once you like get up there, it's like, oh, I could just like hop down off this cliff and now I'm back in Lake Hylia or whatever. And look, there's green mountains over there, but this is the desert.
Yeah.
Right?
It feels like they didn't know whether or not they were going to have enough time to have this section of the world in Hyrule, and so they kind of made it off to the side and like scrambled, and they're like, we're gonna make this, and if we can fit it in there, we're gonna stick it on. And then it came about that they did have time and they got it polished, and then they just literally like did a copy and sloppy paste right on the border, and like
or
that's
the
what
other
it
way
feels
around.
like.
Or they made it and they ran out of time to put the path to get to it.
Yeah, right. Also that. Yeah, is one of the two, because this feels very sloppy in a way that Zelda doesn't feel sloppy.
They're all just like, how do we get them up to the desert? And someone was like, well, we've got a cannon. Is that good for anything? Like,
yeah,
they really get some mileage out of this cannon. Like, and later in the game, I mean, not to be too spoilery, but we use it later in the game to reach another significant area.
This is a very useful cannon.
Like, okay? I don't know why they felt like we really needed the man cannon. Maybe they played a lot of Halo recently and really liked the man cannons on the PvP maps.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know, man. This is a weird one.
Okay, yeah. I really do like being back in Gerudo Desert, I have to say. It's always a fun place to go, and I think every time we visit the desert region in a Zelda game, we say something along the lines of like, oh, it's fun to be here because this feels very different than the places that we've already been to.
Sure. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I'm going to yank the pod cart again because we have totally skipped over how do we get to the Gerudo Desert. We haven't talked about, and that's, I guess we've done our brush first impressions, right? But I don't want to skip over. I don't want to go right to Gerudo Desert. I want to make sure we talk about our cast of characters that we meet in Telma's Bar, how we get to the Gerudo Desert, Aru, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other first blush impressions anyone wants to give before we kind of turn around?
So I just want to say that I really do agree with Sam. I feel like this is the point in the game where it feels very definitively like you are now in Act 2.
Yes.
That's a very tangible feeling. And a lot of that, of course, is because, like last week, we tied up a lot of those early plot threads, and those are pretty definitively done now. And like we've got new MacGuffins, we have new things that we're pursuing. It feels very much like, okay, this is we have moved into a new period of the game, and I really do, and I enjoy that a lot. I think that's an exciting feeling in and of itself.
Yeah, I always love the what is our next treasure to chase. That's always a fun gear switch in a Zelda game.
So let's go back to Castletown real quick. Sam, we were talking in the last few weeks about how one of the biggest surprises to us is the strength of the cast of characters, of secondary characters, especially in this game. And in Castletown, we meet up for the first time. We've seen them previously when we were Wolf Link, but this time we meet for the first time all of the people that it's basically what did we call them last week, Matt? They're like the Order of the White Lotus for Hyrule.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they are.
The Order of the Phoenix or something. They're like they're the group of special people, right? Who are like operating on another level. And we basically meet our quest givers for the entire rest of the game. I mean, Sam, do you feel like all these people that are in Telma's Bar, like I'm trying to remember the names now. You've got Ash,
Shad, Ashe, or Ash.
Ashe.
I'm just going to call her Ash. Shad, Ash, Russell, and Aru.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
and Aru, who we don't meet in the bar. Excuse me. Initially, but how do you feel about all these characters, Sam? Do you feel like they're strong in comparison to especially a lot of the early game characters? Like, because I mean, we've got people that we've got emotional attachments to in the early game, right? We've got the kids, and we've got Ilya, and we've got the people that Link grew up with, and all that. But here we're introduced to some new people.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't remember half those names until you said them just now, so they can't be too strong. But I think that Twilight Princess's secondary characters in general are really good in the sense that they have their own personalities and their own unique designs in a way that doesn't often happen. So I'm going to say they're strong.
Yeah.
I like them.
Well, it's funny because I didn't remember any of these people's names either. Even Auru, who you would think would stick with me a bit more because that's a big callback to, I mean, it's not exactly Rauru, but like, come on, they're trying to make you think of it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I remembered what they all looked like, and I remembered immediately which section of the map each one of them corresponded to. So they definitely stuck in my memory a little bit. I like this because so one thing I love about this game especially is that Castletown is very good about feeling populated. Mm-hmm. This version of Hyrule feels like it's got a bustling society in a way that Hyrule doesn't necessarily always feel like. Sometimes it can feel pretty empty, but here it's like, oh yeah, this is a town, people live here, and there's a lot of NPCs that you can't even necessarily interact with, but they're about town doing business, and it makes the world feel lived in. These characters give a level of world building to this version of Hyrule that, again, makes it feel, I guess, more personal, makes the story feel more personal than Zelda stories sometimes do, because these people all have a vested interest in the things that are going on, and we'll come to learn more about that at a later time. But, you know, aside from anyone else, I just have to say it was really nice seeing Russell here.
Yeah, I think the inclusion of Russell in your Hyrule Order of the White Lotus is really, really cool. And I think it gives... And this was something we kind of referred to at the beginning of the game because we knew this was coming up, but it's like it makes Russell feel important. Like, he feels important the first time you play the game because he's like your mentor, semi-father figure. And then later it's like a big reveal, like, oh man, Russell's not just like the cool village guy who knows how to use a sword. Like, he's actually kind of a badass. But then going into it the second or third or fourth time you're playing it, you know that out of the gate. And so every interaction with Russell is colored with that of like, oh, this dude is like actually super badass and awesome. And so I always like trying to put myself in Link's position at this reveal for Link to have that like, oh man moment of like, Russell, what are you doing? Like, oh my gosh.
My not dad is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, oh, so all those things you taught me about the sword, like you've actually used that against bad people and things. And Russell's like, yeah, like, what did you think? I was just hitting dummies. And Link's like, kind of. Yeah. I mean, that's what everybody else has been doing forever in Ordon Village. No one ever like goes anywhere or does anything cool.
Just hitting that pumpkin with the bucket on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I really like the reveal of Russell and this whole crew of characters. Something Max talked a lot about and frequently talks about is characters who have agency and who affect the world around them. In Zelda games, that's like Link and sometimes Zelda and not like anybody else ever.
Companion characters, but I mean, generally speaking.
Yeah, but it's like very limited. And so to have a semi-large cast of characters who have agency and are affecting the outcome of things and who are interacting with the goings on of Hyrule in a dynamic way is really, really cool. And I like that a lot. It's also one of the strongest things about the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild cast of characters, the champions and sages in those games, is they have agency, they act, they're doing things, they're interacting with what is going on. So like that's a strength of some of the newest games in the series, and it's a real big strength of Twilight Princess as well. And I like that a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I wish that we got a little bit more from Auru, because as the main quest giver of this section of the game, we don't really get much time to interact with him or to get to know him before we meet him on, in that tower that's over in Lake Hylia. And it's like a very short conversation in which he's like, hey, I've heard about you. I'm over here looking at the desert because I think bad things might be happening in the desert. I don't know how to get there, but oh, hey, you say you'll go? Great, thanks. Go talk to this guy who owns the cannon.
Yeah, I do want more. Like, what's his story? What's he doing there? Why does he know about the prison when apparently it's been abandoned so long that it's now haunted by long dead ghosts? Like, this can't have been a recent shutting down of the prison, right? Like, there's no way this was this way was active in his lifetime, right? Like,
right.
So I want to know more about, like, how he found out about this, why he thinks it is this way. Give me more. And I think
also, like, what does he know about the desert in general and Gerudo in general?
Right.
Like,
and where are the Gerudo? Are they all dead? Yeah. Did they migrate further into the desert, farther away from Hyrule after the prison was built? Like, there is so much history between Ocarina of Time, Gerudo Desert to now. We assume that the Spirit Temple was converted into this prison. But what happened between now and then and everything else? Like, this is all a lot of things that I really want to know the answer to.
I actually don't assume that, but I want to get into the lore of the dungeon itself in the dungeon map when we get there, because there's a lot to talk about. But yeah, I mean, my read on this is that we're just seeing a part of the desert that's separate from the Gerudo Fortress and all of that. That's the only thing I can really think of, because I hate to believe that the Gerudo were like extinct or something. That's kind of dark. But I agree with you, Sam, that so it's interesting because a lot of these other characters, like we talked to Ashe in the bar, and she's like, oh, I grew up being trained by my father in the Snow Peak Mountains, and so I'm an expert on that region. And then when you talk to Shad, he's like, I'm an expert in the lore of the Sky People, and maybe they created Hyrule, maybe they didn't, I don't know. But they all have these backstories and things that feed into why that character is interested in the place that you have to go. And I do feel like we miss that a little bit from Auru. I think there's a good story there that we're not told.
I bet he has a really cool life.
He saved Fire's life from something at some point. I want to know that story. Yeah. What did he save him from?
It's probably in the manga. Every time we talk about something this season and we're just like, oh, there's a gap in the story here, someone in the Discord is like, read the manga. It explains this. It's really cool.
Yeah. I want to read the manga. I have it. I just haven't read it.
Well, fun news for every patron. We are going to read the manga, and we're going to do a bonus episode, or possibly 2 or 3 about it. So one of our Discord patrons, the wonderful Maximum Nichols, has dedicated himself to mailing us his copy of the manga under the assumption that we will take very good care of it and mail it back to him in pristine condition. And we are going to read it and do some bonus episodes about it. So maybe we'll find out later. At some point.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it will be fun. I'm excited.
Do I know a lot of this is kind of a rabbit trail, but I know a lot of the Zelda games have manga adaptations. Have you kept up with those, or have you read any of them?
No, I have all of them because I bought like one of those box sets. So I have all of the ones that are in that box set. So it's like the Oracle games and Ocarina, and I don't remember what's in there. I haven't read any of them. There. Yeah, that sounds right. And then Twilight Princess is like a not weekly, but it's much longer. And so I have, I don't know, 7 of that one, and I literally flipped through them just to like look at the cute art and the spoiler pictures that I won't. There are fun spoilers in there, but that's it.
Yeah. It's nothing that I've ever like spent time on either, but I'm very excited to get into it.
It's fascinating what they get into in the manga.
It is,
and I know that without even reading it.
Well, especially because one of those things like canon in Zelda games and lore in Zelda games, it's usually just kind of like sketched out more than filled in super detail, right?
Right.
and the manga, it seems like, exists in this other way of doing things where it's like, we're going to flesh as much of this out as we possibly can. And like, yeah, maybe it doesn't feel one-to-one with the game. You know, maybe it feels a little bit like its own separate thing. But it's like the bullet points of the story are in there. And so there's that connective tissue. And so, I don't know, reading through this sounds like it's going to be a really good time. And I'm very excited to do it.
Yeah.
Matt, I think you turned the pod car around at a really good time, but I have to ask, are we allowed to talk about what happens in the desert now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made it there. Let's go to the desert.
Sam, how do you feel about this incarnation of Gerudo Desert versus some of the other ones that we see in other games?
You know, I want to say something really good, but I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna say that I think it's kind of boring. However, the music helps a lot. The music is a bop. But I just feel like it's kind of empty and has assets that feel like they've been copy and pasted around.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's one of those areas that in my memory, it was bigger than this. And then we kind of get in there and it's really not all that big of an actual space. It's far smaller than, Hyrule Field, for instance. But and there's not even really all that much going on there. There's a few fun secrets to find and a little bit of combat to get up to. We've got these little sandworm critters that are assaulting you the entire time you're walking around in here. And I actually was thinking to myself as soon as we landed,
Are they Molduga?
Well, I wasn't. At first, I was like, are these levers? Are they supposed to be this game's version of levers? They don't really look like
there
levers.
There are levers in Hyrule Field.
Right. And you see some later when you're actually going into the Arbiter's grounds. There's some like right in the lead up to that. Yeah. I was like, okay, they're not levers. I don't know what these things are. They're annoying is what they are. But I did end up keeping the claw shot equipped at all times.
Yeah.
Because one, it's of course just a useful item, but you can just drag these suckers right out of the ground with that thing. And then you don't have to worry about them anymore. It's pretty
Absolutely.
great. Yeah. I agree with you, Sam. I think that this version is a little boring. The music is spectacular. I love the Twilight Princess Gerudo Desert music. It sounds very it sounds very ancient. It's got this feeling of antiquity about it that I really enjoy. But it also has that main Twilight Princess motif layered in.
Yeah. You know what they love to use? They use it here. They use it in Twilight Princess a lot. Is that like fake choir track that I don't know. The like artificial choir,
right?
The artificial voices, and I love that. That's like my favorite thing that any video game could ever put in their music, and I love it when they do it in Zelda music. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
but I want to give a shout out to anybody else who loves this song. There's a lot of really good videos on YouTube that just have it looped for like 4 hours with like gentle fire in the background. If you need something to study to or nap to.
I will add that to my rotation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
It's so good.
I'll add it to my actually pretty substantial collection of like multiple hour long Zelda ambiance music playlists. Like that's been mostly Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for a while, but you know what? I'm ready to go do something else now, and I'll throw this in there.
Lyndon, I just looked it up. You know what those little worm things are?
What?
Moldorms.
Oh, they're like worms.
Yeah, they are classified as moldorms.
They look way more wormy in this game than they do in any other Zelda game.
Yeah, I thought they were like the precursor to Moldugas, which I guess a moldorm could be a precursor to a Molduga,
yeah, it's like
theoretically. Kind of the same
worm
thing.
Molduga.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Cool. Neat. Thanks for looking that up, Matt.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. So I do want to say one more thing because we haven't really mentioned this a lot, but so when talking about this musical track, I mentioned that the main Twilight Princess motif is kind of looped throughout it. You know, the bum, 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 ba-da-dum. So, and we haven't mentioned the fact that that is kind of the case for almost all of the music in this game. And I was kind of struggling to think of another Zelda game that has the main theme of the game looped into as much of the music as it does in Twilight Princess. I think it's really interesting. I don't get tired of it. I think it works basically everywhere that they use it, but
because they differentiate it enough, right? Like it's not always just the underlying minor melody. It's always fit into the theme of whatever it is they're fitting it in with. So it feels different enough while being recognizable to not be repetitive. Like, it's not repetitive. I think this is the big thing.
Yeah. There are some very fun things that do happen in the desert, though. So we come across an encampment of bokoblins who are riding around on the pigs, right? On the big old boars. And basically the only way to get access to the deeper portion of the desert is to knock a bokoblin off the pig and then ride the pig through a bunch of stuff. And this was something that I completely forgot about. And I was very pleasantly surprised when I got here because, like, I don't know, having alternating mounts in Zelda games is always really fun to me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I enjoy it. But riding these pigs around is actually a really good time. It's fun just hitting that button and just watching it go wild and destroy everything in its path.
Yeah, I really like the war pigs. Someone, whoever designed this section was listening to a lot of, I think it's AC/DC, who had the war pigs song. No, it's not AC/DC. It's Black Sabbath. Yeah, Black Sabbath had war pigs.
Man, you should double check that before you dropped it in.
I think it's Black Sabbath.
Okay. Sure, yeah. Whoever designed this section of the game was listening to a lot of either
Black Sabbath
or AC/DC. It's Black Sabbath.
It's Black Sabbath.
Cool.
Yeah, it's Black Sabbath. Someone was listening to a lot of Black Sabbath and wanted heavily some war pigs, and we get some war pigs, and we get to ride the war pigs, which is super fun. I think it's really cool that they have that charge attack. They feel different enough from Epona that it doesn't feel like just a reskin. You know,
yeah,
it's a very different style of mount, and it's a lot of fun just running through the bokoblin archer towers and watching them blow up and the bokoblins fall off and die. Like, yeah, that's really cool. I'm for it.
It's great.
And so, like, I think for that reason, both of you said you didn't really like this Gerudo Desert because it feels empty. I mean, if you think about the Gerudo Desert in Ocarina of Time, all you have is that big sandstorm and the Po you have to follow. And there's not like nothing else until you get to the oasis where the spirit temple is. And like, if you think about this section of Gerudo Desert compared to that section of Gerudo Desert, this really has more because you have the whole bokoblin camp interaction. So I don't know that I agree that it's totally empty or bad. I think it suffers from the same problem that Hyrule Field in general suffers from, which is it is just too big. There is too much just walking around for no reason. And there's just like, you could literally shrink this entire map by 20 to 30%, compress everything so it's closer together, and you would have a more svelte feeling game.
Maybe
it would feel less grand, which I know they were going for grand and they were going for big and they were going for new generation of game.
Yeah.
But like, grand and empty is not as fun as smaller and fuller.
The thing is,
more full.
The thing is, you're right that I guess on paper, the actual desert wasteland in Ocarina of Time is not much different than this. But in Ocarina of Time, you kind of have an extended process of journeying through the Gerudo region before you even get there, right? You've got to go through Gerudo Valley, and then you're in the Desert Fortress, and then or then you're in Gerudo Fortress, and then you go through the gate, then you're in the desert, and then you're at the oasis, right? It feels like you're kind of journeying through a whole section of world there. And here it just feels like, hey, here's this little sandy area that's just kind of stuck off to the side, and there's not really that much else to it.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I actually think if you moved the bokoblin camp up, like you moved it closer to where you're entering the desert, where it's like central, it would have helped a lot.
Totally agree. Like, I think the pacing of it doesn't work super well. I agree with that 100%. But can we agree the bokoblin camp was fun?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And then I think the even more fun part is the stealth mission, kill all the bokoblins before they sound the alarm. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I like that section a lot.
So this is where it actually does start getting really fun and interesting, because I love the entire lead up to actually walking in the dungeon.
Yeah.
The stealth mechanics of it are a really good time. And
you don't even have to, I didn't do stealth at all. I just let them all mob me and it killed everybody because it was fun.
So I did it both ways. I went in here with one heart and no potions, and I'm playing on hero mode, right?
Yeah.
And
so you had the annoying beep the whole time.
Yeah, I did. And I was getting mobbed, and I got the impression that I had done it wrong, right? I was like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten there's stealth that I can do here. I'd kind of prefer to do that. And also this beeping sucks. So, take me, sweet death. respawn with 3 hearts, and then I did it the correct way.
Did you get the piece of heart at the end?
From inside the pig?
From inside the pig?
Yes.
That's really, really gross. Now all I'm imagining is that pieces of heart are actually just like hearts of slaughtered large creatures. Now I don't like it.
That pig looks disgusting. It's just like hanging over the fire.
Literally, they just slaughtered one of the war pigs, skinned it, and are roasting it. And that sounds horrible. That's got to be the gamiest, toughest, grossest meat that has ever existed.
And also, those war pigs don't deserve that. They're nice.
No, they're not.
They've been just working all along. They're just doing their job.
Hey, you know what, Matt? The animals themselves are not at fault, right?
They were raised and trained to be war machines that are bloodthirsty killers. That doesn't make them not bloodthirsty killers.
I think they look very grateful when Link starts to ride them. Okay. I think they understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
Okay. Yeah. The stealth section is really fun. I really like how there's a lot of interesting things done with line of sight in this area, right? Like you can push boxes around and look through like peepholes to see later areas. You can see gaps in fences and stuff that you can shoot arrows through to take down archers before they can even see you. Like that's all really good. And on top of that, the scenery of all of this is just really excellent. Like,
yeah. The sense of place is great here.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, and we'll get back to this when we talk about the actual dungeon, but I love when areas in Zelda games, we say this all the time, I love when they feel functional or when they feel that they serve authentic to the universe, right?
Yeah, they serve the function that you would think it would serve.
Yeah. And so this feels very much like that. This is the ruined approach to the Arbiter's grounds. It's fallen into disrepair, but you get the impression that this used to be a whole encampment, right? This used to be a whole facility.
This was the guard post. This is where the guards lived when they were not on shift and, rotating in and out. And it was probably a small city at some point, like a small town.
Sure.
Trading outpost where the supplies came in, new prisoners were brought in. Yeah. Like it feels all of that. It's really cool. Did you have the hawk mask for this section?
I do, but I didn't use it.
Okay. I only used it once for the really far away guy that, like, when you first come in and you can see the farthest bokoblin all the way to the left. I used it for him and it was fun.
Okay. Sam, how do you feel about stealth sections in Zelda games just in general? This has been kind of a recurring theme for us in the last few games that we've played. And we feel like it's done effectively in some places and less effectively in others. For instance, the Silent Realms in Skyward Sword can be kind of frustrating as a stealth experience. And also the Phantoms in Temple of the Ocean King in Phantom Hourglass.
Suck.
Yeah.
I'm pretty anti-stealth in general. And I think Zelda games in general could do without it, but I also am never going to complain as long as we have the option to avoid it. like in this case.
Yeah, I'm all for the full frontal assault approach most of the time. Yeah,
but that's nice. I like that there are options. I think that's one of the things where, maybe poor Phantom Hourglass, we keep finding reasons to like go back and snip at that game in this one, and that's probably not fair. But
hey, we also did that to Twilight Princess for most of our earlier seasons.
That's a good point. I do think Temple of the Ocean King, like if you could have done it either way, right? Like if you want to have a combat heavy experience where you're having to fight through the phantoms, or you want to stealth it, I think that could have been really nice. I like that you do have the option here. I like that people like Matt can just run in with a sword swinging and take down the whole camp. Or I love stealth games, and I would never say that this is like a robust stealth system, right? But it's just enough for me to have fun with it, and it's not easy necessarily. Well, I guess it is kind of easy, but like
it's definitely easy.
It is, but it's not. I don't know, what am I trying to say here? It's just challenging enough. Not even really challenging at all, but like there's just enough to it, and it's not finicky, right? It's not easy to fail this for some weird reason that you don't understand, right? Like if you do kick off, like if you do fail at doing the stealth and you start getting mobbed by the enemies, it was just because there was an enemy somewhere that you didn't notice that saw you, and that's really all there is to it. There's no more complicated mechanics than that, and I do appreciate that. Do we have anything else that we want to say about the approach to the Arbiter's Grounds before we actually start talking about the temple, which I think is going to be kind of the big meaty part of this episode because there's a lot to get into there.
How did you feel about sword fighting Big Boy?
Oh, I hated that guy. He was so mean.
He was really mean. He smacked the war pig for no reason. No reason at all.
The war pig. And then when you finally beat him, for some reason, Link just stands there while he cusses Link out.
That
and then
made me so mad.
Limps out
and then sets the whole thing on fire. Like, dude, why did you let him get up and walk away? Are you kidding me?
I was very curious. I was like, are we choosing now to have like a conscience about killing bokoblins, right? Like, I don't understand why we let this guy go. It seemed like a very bad idea in the moment. And I was kind of wondering for a second whether or not we were supposed to believe that this is the same King Bulbin that we've been fighting for the rest of the game. Like, because this is the third time we run into an enemy like this. We fought the one on Elden Bridge, and then we fought the other one on the Lake Hylia Bridge. And both times, I think they just kind of like get flung off the bridge, right?
Yeah.
And into the water below or whatever.
Yeah. And so you don't actually see them die necessarily.
Right. So I was just wondering, I was like, oh, is it just the same dude? And like, he just keeps getting away every time?
Man, that would be so annoying.
Unclear. Regardless, he's horribly abusive to animals, and that can't be excused. See, Matt, the war pig. I just feel a lot of sympathy for the war pig here,
especially this one. He didn't do anything.
Didn't deserve.
Gosh, that was just rude.
I will say on hero mode, this fight was actually not necessarily stressful, but if you let yourself get hit by this guy, he does a whopping 5 hearts of damage on hero mode. More than half your health.
He didn't hit me a single time. I mean, I killed this guy so fast just because he doesn't move quickly. So I was just constantly shield bash, helm splitter over. And then if he blocked the shield bash, I would just do the back cut, or where you hop around twice and chwa. Yeah. Like, it was so easy.
So that was one of my big points about this whole fight, which is that at this point in the game, you're starting to see a lot of use cases for the combat skills that you're learning from the hero's shade.
Yeah.
Which I really like. Getting new combat abilities is always fun, but it's only fun if there's a feasible way to use them. And if there's a feasible way to use them somewhat often. I feel like sometimes Zelda games give you combat abilities and it's like they're neat in and of themselves, but there's not a whole lot of use case for them. But I find myself against a lot of the enemies in Twilight Princess actually relying on shield bash and helm splitter, or roll around and poke them in the back or whatever, which I really like. It creates a really fun flow of combat the further that you go into this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the combat abilities are really well executed here, for sure.
Yeah. How do you feel about the look of the Arbiter's Grounds just as we're approaching it?
I think it's really cool. I think that it is a repurposed spirit temple, personally. I'm interested to hear why you don't, but to me, it kind of looks like it could very easily be that. The stone, it feels the same. A lot of the motifs, the carvings, the statues, a lot of the stuff feels very similar. Yeah. And I really, really like it.
Sam, how do you feel about the look of this building, just as we're kind of approaching it?
I love how it looks, just because it feels so grand. It looks like the Roman Colosseum or something. It's just huge, you know?
Yeah.
And the details are there. Like, you see the little Hylian motifs around. There's a lot to look at, and that's what I like about it.
I like that all of the doors have the symbols of the medallions, spiritual medallions carved over them. Yeah. And I really think that's so cool. And obviously the mirrors on top, you can see even from a distance, the mirrors on top have those same motifs from Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
So I love the continuity that exists here. And it's another one of those examples of Twilight Princess very explicitly calling back to Ocarina of Time, and it works super well here.
Yeah,
to its advantage.
The thing that I love about this building is that you can actually see bits of it from lots of different places in Hyrule, especially once we get to Lake Hylia. For that whole section of the game, going to Lake Bed Temple, you're kind of seeing the very top of the Arbiter's grounds from the lake. And the first time I played this game, I always thought it was so interesting because it's intriguing, right? Like you want to find out what the deal is with that building. You want to go take a closer look at it. It looks so distinctive that you feel like it has to be something, you know? And then actually getting there and being in front of it is a really fun payoff of those moments of like asking questions about like, what is all that? And of course you can, same thing, like you can see bits and pieces of it during the Hero's Shade, like Wolf Song cutscenes and stuff too. So, yeah, I think it's a really fun payoff, and it makes this version of Hyrule feel vast and interconnected in a really fun way. Like the fact that you can see so many landmarks just in general of this version of Hyrule from any other part of the map, right? Like you can see Hyrule Castle from most any place in this version of Hyrule, for instance. I like that, and I think that makes it feel like a connected world altogether. But let's go ahead and get into part 3, which is the dungeon map, where we talk about this week's dungeon from mechanics to music and more. This week's dungeon is the Arbiter's Grounds. So a brief synopsis of this dungeon before we get into our actual discussion about it. The Arbiter's Grounds is an asymmetrical dungeon layout. It does not have a central hub. It's got one central room that has 4 torches. They're lit when you walk into the dungeon with blue flames, but as soon as you step forward, the blue flames are captured by 4 different poes that scatter to different areas of the dungeon. The front half of the dungeon is concerned exclusively with hunting down those 4 poes and relighting the torches. That first area of the dungeon has a healthy mixture of Wolf Link and Human Link sections, having to rotate back and forth between those 2 forms to solve a variety of puzzles. There are rooms with moving, what would you call these, Matt? These stone, like where you have to push the stone tab and it like rotates the arrangement of the room.
Modular stone columns, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
sure.
Yeah, something. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it kind of is. But there are a lot of rooms in this dungeon where you have to move a central piece to rotate access to a variety of rooms that branch off of a central area. It's kind of a recurring theme. Lots of keys in this dungeon, which I feel like is pretty appropriate given its identity as a prison, right? But once you get past the first half of the dungeon, which ends with the boss fight against the giant sword-wielding demon, you get access to the dungeon's item, which is the spinner. It's basically a giant spinning top that Link rides around on. It can slot itself into rails that are scattered around the dungeon, and then you kind of end up on a little roller coaster section where you're basically on a track, a predetermined track that takes you around whatever room you happen to be in. You can jump back and forth between tracks. So if you're on, if there's 2 parallel tracks, you're on the right one, you can push the jump button and it'll bounce you over to the left one. That mechanic is used quite a lot. Going through the back half of the dungeon, it's basically all traversal using the spinner item until you get to the very end and the boss room where you face off against the boss Stalord, who is an immense dragon fossil. Stalord has 2 phases that we'll talk about when we get down to the boss section. But definitely a bigger dungeon by far than anything else that we've had in Twilight Princess so far. And Sam, I want to pass it off to you, open it up for you to hit us with your memories and your just general impressions of what this dungeon is and like your opinions of it.
Okay. This dungeon is really scary. there's just so much sand. There's a lot of sand in this dungeon, and there's a lot of things hiding in the sand. Some of the things are more annoying than they are scary, like the mites that come out, or the little, I guess they're still the moldworms in there.
Yes.
They're just, those guys are just kind of annoying, you know, but then we've got reedheads, we've got all different kinds of Stalfos and little skeleton guys, you know. It does feel like one of the more, if not most, populated dungeons in terms of enemies. But I have to say, I think that this dungeon has some of the best dungeon design in all of Zelda, partially just because there's so much going on from like a mini boss and then boss perspective, which are top tier. But also, I love my little spinning top. So there's that.
You like playing some Beyblade?
Yeah, I do. If I could stand on Beyblades, I would not ever do anything else.
I have neither the physical coordination nor probably the athletic stamina to pull that off. So I'm living through Link in these moments where he's riding around on the spinner.
Yeah, seriously, that is some serious balance game.
Yeah, no kidding. I totally agree with you. I think it's interesting because the Arbiter's Grounds, a lot of people reference this as being potentially the best dungeon in this game. And I think last week, Matt, we mentioned that's like,
it's either this one or Snow Peak.
It's either this one or the next one. We'll see what happens when we get to next week's episode. But I do think that this dungeon has such a fantastic sense of place. And you're absolutely right. It is very spooky. And that was something that I didn't really remember about it too much. I tend to remember this dungeon as being just like the desert prison, and in my mind, the haunted element of that, the fact that it's the haunted desert prison is something that I tend to forget about. But it's really great because, the Spirit Temple had a haunted ziggurat sort of feel to it in Ocarina of Time. Mm-hmm. But this dungeon kind of doubles down on that premise even more.
So this whole dungeon reminded me very strongly of the 1999 movie, The Mummy. In like the best way. And I love that movie. I think
starring Oscar winner Brendan Fraser.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and Admiral Daddy. Oded Ferrer.
Osiris.
Yeah. Oded Ferrer, I think
it's Oded Fair.
Oded Fair. Like
Admiral Daddy.
That's the greatest Gen reference for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about. Greatest Trek. Anyway,
Star Trek. Yeah.
Anyway, like this whole dungeon experience calls back that movie to me so strongly and in the best way possible. Like it is, whereas the Spirit Temple was like the top was Hamunaptra, where it was spooky and kind of haunted, and like the wind would blow at weird times and in weird ways, but you didn't see any ghosts, or you weren't attacked by a mummy.
The Spirit Temple was a bit more like dark magic than it was haunted.
Right. And that was also Hamunaptra. It was like, this place is like evil, dark magic, bad things happened here. But then when you got down underneath into the tombs beneath Hamunaptra is when you got mummies coming alive and attacking you, the flesh-eating scarab beetles, et cetera, et cetera. And like this dungeon feels like the underbelly of Hamunaptra, whereas Spirit Temple and Ocarina of Time felt like the surface. Okay. And I love it. It is amazing. It is scary. It is just full tilt. It's like they took the Shadow Temple and the Spirit Temple and said, what if we made them have baby?
What if both?
What if yes? And that's how we got Arbiter's Grounds. And I love it. It's great.
I like the analogies that you're making right now, Matt.
Thank you.
They're very apt, I think. It is really funny because the lore of this whole place is that it's basically death row for Hyrule. Mm-hmm. Like if you've done real bad, then you get sent to the Arbiter's Grounds.
Like we're assuming this is where serial killers go and like traitors.
Well, yeah,
and
like after you've been sent to the Shadow Temple to be subjected to like
Sheikah torture,
marginally ethical interrogation techniques, I guess.
Then you get shipped off to the Arbiter's Grounds to get either executed by the Death Sword guy or just the Mirror of Twilight.
Yeah, or we just send you into another dimension.
Yeah, one of the two. I don't know. We assume this other dimension is the underworld, but apparently it's not. So,
question.
Yeah,
where are all of the Hyrule criminals being sent nowadays?
I like to think that they have evolved their justice system to not include
everyone gets
punishment.
Instantly rehabilitated.
Yeah, it's more of a rehabilitation than a punitive system of
much
justice.
more humane. Yes,
yeah.
That's good. That's great.
We like
Zelda
to see,
would never.
exactly. We like to see progress in.
Well,
that
I mean, this Zelda might. She kind of has a reputation, but
this Zelda's grandma abolished the Arbiter's Grounds and the Shadow Temple in one fell swoop. She's just like,
maybe we're not going to do morally dubious things to our subjects anymore.
Yes.
And our Zelda is thinking about bringing it back. So
Exactly. She's like, honestly, though, that capital punishment thing.
It's best not to talk to this Zelda too much because who knows what she's all about. But
we will not tell her about the condition of Arbiter's Grounds.
Yeah.
yes, that sounds good. But I love the lore of this, and I feel like the design of the dungeon, just putting the haunted element of it to one side, I think the design of the dungeon really communicates this very well. It feels like a desert dungeon, like not a dungeon in the Zelda sense, but a dungeon in the prison sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the bars, the cells, the ruins of like actual prison-y looking accoutrement, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very well done and very well communicated. Honestly, I think it has such a claustrophobic feeling to it. There's something about the lack of the symmetry of the layout that's leaning into that. I think the Spirit Temple was very symmetrical. It felt more ceremonial, right? You had a main hub room in the Spirit Temple, and then you had wings that went off to the side, and the temple itself was arranged mostly symmetrically. But this just sort of feels much more purpose-built for the purpose of being a prison.
Yeah, I think my read on it was they took the Spirit Temple and just kind of reworked it. And the reason I think that is you have that big main room after you get the top spinner, and it's got the statues in it, and then there's the one room where you have to light the lantern, and it has the same lady holding her hands out wrapped around by the snake.
Right.
And so like it feels to me like they just took the Spirit Temple, either like blew up half of it and built the prison, or just
so here's the reason that I don't
it.
think they're the same space.
Yes,
and I've never actually seen this in the game for myself, but the internet knowledge has led me to believe that there is a point in the Gerudo Desert where you can look off into the distance and see the Desert Colossus in the far distance.
Well, I actually kind of hope you're right, because I would hate to think that the Spirit Temple was turned into this.
Yeah, my read on this is that, one, I think that there's a longer period of time between this game and Ocarina of Time than just like 100 years.
For sure. I definitely agree with that.
And I think that this structure was built... It was either built between Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, or it was always there and we just didn't see it in Ocarina of Time. I do think that this is a different place for sure. Cool. But yeah, I do really like the design of it. I love the difference in feeling once you have defeated a Poe in an area. Like, so when an area is still haunted by one of these 4 Poes, it's like the lights are down. There's lots of blue kind of ghost light. And then you defeat the Poe and the lights kind of come up a little bit and it gets a little bit more orangey. I think that's a really cool tone and aesthetic shift. Sam, how do you feel about the reuse of the defeat 4 Poes to unlock the rest of the dungeon thing? It's a very forest temple.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't feel like a lazy reuse. It feels like a nice callback. I'm pro 4 Poes, although I will say the big Poes are horrifying. They have the scariest faces.
They look
like them.
They look like unmasked Dementors.
Yes, they do.
They're so scary.
Yeah, I don't. Man, creepy.
Yeah, with their like wide gaping mouths and no, they're nightmare fuel. I completely agree. I think that this is a good callback, much more than it is a lazy reuse of a thing from the Forest Temple. It's one of those things where it's like Zelda games occasionally like taking little bits like this and tastefully reusing them in later games. And as long as it's just that, a tasteful reuse, then it's totally fine. And I think that this falls into that category. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the Poe hunting is fun. So there are 2 on the left side. You have to move the pillar around to shift the wall. And to get, in my case, it was the 4th Poe I got. Immediately when you go under, you move the thing. You're supposed to look up and hook shot to the grate up there.
Yeah.
I did not realize that for quite a while. So I wasted quite a bit of time on that one.
I liked this puzzle so much.
Yeah, it was really good.
It's the kind of thing that you can't actually do in the Breath of the Wild and Twilight or in Tears of the Kingdom convention of Zelda.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I miss most about the Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Wind Waker convention of doing things. Having a more Metroidvania approach to puzzle solving where you've got certain items that allow you access to certain areas really allows you cool moments like this. Because I was the same, Matt. It took me a minute of going back and forth between these rooms to realize that was something that you could do. Mm-hmm. And the solution is simple. You just have to look up. You just have to observe you don't, your surroundings.
But for some reason, even in a 3D game, humans are not really programmed to think 3D. Most of our lives is lived on a two-dimensional plane of just like what is in front of us, beside us, or behind us. We very rarely look up or down. And so even puzzle solving in video games is easier for a person to visualize in a 2D space. So when you're utilizing a 3D space like that, especially in a game where you have loading zones. So every time you open a door, you're going through a loading zone. So you're thinking about these things segmented, right? So you're not thinking that like, you know that these floors are connected because there's just the floor between them. You know, the floor above you. So you have the connection in your mind, but you're also thinking about, I'm in a video game, and if I go out that door, I'm now in a different section, and then I have to go in the door above to be in a different section. So there's this weird segmentation that happens logically, and a really good puzzle like this helps you push past that and see it more as a connected piece. Well, and I think it's super well designed.
Well, especially in a lot of the 3D Zelda dungeons, a room can be on top of another room in the arrangement of floors, right?
Yeah.
But most often they are not connected.
And what you do in the bottom or top floor does not in any way or shape or form affect the inverse.
Now, sometimes it does, but in this case, we have the cool mechanic of pushing the little stone tab that rotates the spinny wall, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one extra level of kind of creating a barrier between you and realizing the solution immediately. Like if the wall is pushed out of position, then you can't even like get up to the room above, you know?
Right.
Like you get up there and the floor looks solid. You don't even realize that there's a hole there that the room.
There's
an
indent, but the indent is filled in and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? And then and if you have the dungeon map, you can see that the only place I haven't been, it's the only place that's dark on the whole map right now, besides the boss room, is right in there. Mm-hmm. And how am I supposed to get there? And so then you start working through the steps. And what did it for me was I finally like looked at the pillar and saw the grate, and I was like, oh, that's a hookshot grate.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I'm there. So the visual language to help the player get there is also very well designed.
Yeah.
So it's really good.
I have a line of conversation that I want to get into, but before we do that, just as a little context on your end of things, Sam, tell me how you feel about Wolf Link sections in Twilight Princess.
I think they're charming. I've come to enjoy them.
Well, that's good. At least someone does.
I enjoy Wolf Link combat. I'll say that, depending on how long I have to do it.
Yeah.
If it's a quick battle, then I enjoy it. When you get trapped and you have to do like a 15-minute fight as Wolf Link, that's not my favorite.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm glad one person that we have talked to so far likes Wolf Link.
But this is where I'm kind of going with this. I feel like now that we kind of mentioned this last week as a hope for the back half of the game, now that you can freely transform between human and Wolf Link, to me, it feels like a much better system, especially in the context of this dungeon now, because what you're able to do is to have puzzles that apply specifically to either human or Wolf Link, and you have to know when to make the transformation and when one is required versus the other. Mm-hmm. And I think this dungeon has a very good balance of both of them. I think it leverages both forms of Link very effectively. And I think that that's actually really impressive. Like, now that I'm seeing this implementation, I think it's a much better argument for why Wolf Link should have been in this game versus the stuff we were doing in the front half, right? Which is like shadow bug collecting and moving through the Twilight realm as Wolf Link. Like, none of that stuff was as fun because it just didn't feel as fun moment to moment as regular Zelda puzzle solving. But now
you're trapped in it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I'm not having fun trying to beat this Poe as Wolf Link anymore. I'm gonna just not.
Yeah. And not having the option to transform, I think, is frustrating for a lot of people. But now that we have it, I don't know. I think that this is a really well pulled off balance of things. I mean, I feel like you spend about 1/3 of this dungeon as Wolf Link and 2/3 as Human Link. And to me, that feels like a good balance.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think that, you and I were both very down on Wolf Link for the entire season so far. And this section did feel like this is kind of what they intended Wolf Link to always be, and it was good. It was good. It was way better than it has been. And yeah, to your point, the free transformation back and forth for puzzle solving specifically is a really, really good extra layer that, previous dungeons, while all the previous dungeons were good, this is just like kind of an extra step, like a good little Luxardo cherry in your old fashioned.
Oh, yeah. An extra layer of complexity, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice because it forces you to be on the lookout for different things, right? Yeah. Like now all of a sudden you have to be looking for patches of dirt that look like they can be dug in, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the balance that they pulled off here, and I'm very curious to see how much that continues into later dungeons in the game, because to my memory, it's not quite as dominant of a mechanic in Snow Peak or Temple of Time or any of those other places, right?
Yeah, I actually really don't remember this being used a whole lot after this outside of the Twilight realm.
But here it's really called for because we've already established that you can only see Poes and you can only do combat with Poes when you're doing Wolf Link, Spidey vision, right?
Yep.
And so I think that it makes a lot of sense here. I do want to say that I really appreciate that this dungeon just straight up gives you 4 Poe souls. Like if those are a thing.
Yeah, I'm glad that it goes towards the Giovanni quest for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it would have been fun even if it didn't do that. But the fact that it is just feeding into that whole deal is like, okay, cool. This is like 4 less Poe souls than I need to worry about going and finding out in the rest of the world, which is.
Plus there's like a ton in the desert, aren't there?
Yeah, there's like 17 in the desert, including these 4. So yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah. So it's definitely great. I think I've already hit the initial 20 that you need to get to go back and kick off the next little wave of like Giovanni being like, hey, thanks for these 20 Poe souls. By the way,
go get 60 more.
I need more. Yeah. Okay, Giovanni. So Wolf Link sections are quite a lot of fun in here. Let's talk about the mini boss fight. And Matt, do we actually know what this guy is called?
The Death Blade or something, the Death Sword or something.
The Death Sword.
Whoa. Yeah. That's a cool name for a cool guy.
Yeah. Hold on. I literally just had it. Stalfa, Stall Children, Bubbles, Poison, Quicksand. Yeah, Death Sword.
Sweet. I mean, what else could you even call this guy, right?
No, Death Sword's appropriate. Yeah, I'm there for that.
I just think the moment when you step into this mini boss room is so freaking creepy because you've got this terrifying sword stuck out of the middle of the ground with like the ropes tied to it with the little charms like hanging off.
Yeah, almost as if it's trying to keep it contained.
Yeah,
like those charms feel like they were placed there to like keep the sword embedded in the ground instead of doing what it eventually does. So yeah, it's so scary. I love it.
Link walks in like, time to unseal a demon.
Seriously though, like literally this thing is a demon more or less, and that's so scary.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. This fight is also really fun. I do wish that you had to go back and forth between the Wolf Link part of it and the actual combat part a little more frequently. Like once you you do the Wolf Link part right at the very beginning and you sort of knock the Death Blade into the physical realm. And after that, it's just a regular Link fight. I wish that there had been a back and forth of like 1 or 2 more times of doing that. But overall, it is a really fun fight. And yeah, it's just, I love when mini bosses get ultra cool design like this.
Yeah. He could, design wise, he could easily pass for like an actual boss.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I think that's right. It's definitely a step above just like, oh, the mini boss of this dungeon is a slightly bigger Octorok than all the other Octoroks you've been fighting.
Yeah.
or it's a pitcher plant with a Deku Baba head.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
He actually looks like, well, he would have come first, but he looks like the Lich from Adventure Time. If you ever see that part.
I
He looks
have never
exactly
seen
like
it.
that.
I've never seen Adventure Time.
He's scary.
I have seen the Lich in Adventure Time, and I think you're exactly right. But you're right. This would have preceded that by a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a really freaking cool design. And there's something about this enemy that looks a little bit more Wind Waker to me than
really
other enemies in
Maybe
Twilight
it's
Princess.
the horns, like the curly horns.
Yeah.
Whatever he's got going on.
Yeah, that might be it.
That's interesting. I don't.
Or the big sword. It's proportion wise, it's kind of Wind Waker.
The big sword, maybe, but like, I don't really get like that read
Very
at all.
exaggerated proportions. I don't know. It's how I felt, Matt. You don't have to agree with me.
Okay. I mean, I don't agree with you, but I'm glad you're not looking for my approval there. So because you're not getting it.
No. So for some reason in my mind, this mini boss was a Phantom Ganon fight. I don't know why I thought that.
Huh.
It has kind of Phantom Ganon-y vibes to it, I guess, but I don't know, especially like
Wind Waker Phantom Ganon,
right.
maybe, but
maybe
like,
that's where the connection is happening.
Yeah, probably because
know.
this is not Ocarina of Time Phantom.
Oh
Ganon
no,
or
not at all.
anything. Like,
not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, definitely not Phantom Ganon. It's a complete separate enemy, but a really fun fight. So let's move back to having just a general discussion about ways that the Arbiter's Grounds is different as a dungeon from what we've had in Twilight Princess so far. And Sam, I'm gonna send this one to you. I mean, especially stacking it up against dungeons like the Forest Temple and the Goron Mines and the Lakebed Temple. I guess give me some things that you feel like are helping to set this dungeon apart, other than the aesthetic, like just the arrangement of it and stuff like that.
I think just that there's so many different ways to kind of unlock your next area. So there's digging, hookshot, the little pulley tabs that I guess Wolflink bites onto and backs up with. There's eventually we got our spinny tops. There's what else is there? There's something else.
There's all the spinning columns that you move around. There's
you pushing the columns for the secret thing,
and the walls that move around to reveal new paths.
Oh, and we've got the proximity based spike traps, right? Where
yes,
you think you can move freely through a room, but it's like nope, spike wall.
Right, and there's also you get to use Wolflink's scent following, whatever you would call that ability, to sniff out the pose. Like I just feel like they really pulled out everything that they could have thrown at you, but they did it like in a really tasteful, enjoyable way.
Yeah, and it's nice because to that point, I feel like a lot of the items that you've gotten in previous dungeons are actually kind of necessary here. At the very least, it's kind of settled into a system where the claw shot and the bow have basically got to be permanently equipped because you're using them throughout this entire thing. But you also have to use the lantern quite a lot in here, which is nice. The lantern is one of those items that tends to be sort of a throwaway in Zelda games. Like you get it early on and have to do one or two things with it, but you never really get back to it after that. The lantern is kind of important in here. And the dungeon is pretty good about giving you access to lantern oil. So it's pretty useful to keep at least one bottle empty as you go through the Arbiter's Grounds, because you definitely want to have a refill of lantern oil just in case. It would be pretty sucky to run out of that as you kind of move deeper and deeper into this thing. The thing that strikes me the most about this dungeon just overall is just how big it is. I mean, it's massive. It is sprawling. It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. I feel like I spent about an hour and a half in here. Is that about same for you, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. I think my total playtime here was like an hour 15, hour 20 before I got to the boss fight, which was probably another 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it's great because it somehow manages to be very long without feeling too long.
Yeah, it doesn't overstay its welcome at all, which is crazy. The dungeon might be longer than the water temple, which is kind of hard to do in Zelda games. Normally, water temples are definitely the biggest and longest.
Just to clarify, do you mean Ocarina of Time water temple, or do you mean Lake Bed Temple?
Lake Bed Temple.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Sorry. So yeah, I think that we've got a chunky boy here, and it manages to stay engaging and fun the whole way through to a point that I was never sitting there looking at how long I had been playing. I was never looking at like, oh my gosh, how many more rooms do I have to clear? I was never, doing any of those kinds of checks. I was just really invested in and enjoying my time through the dungeon. It was really, really good.
There was one puzzle in here that really, the one that I spent the longest time trying to figure out. It's the room, for me, it's the room immediately before the last Poe that you find. I don't know. Can you actually do the Poes out of order? Can you do them non-linearly?
I think so. I think you're supposed to get the one that we got last where you have to hook shot up. I think you can do that one first or second. So
okay.
I think you can kind of do them out of order.
So the one that got me the most is there's a room right before what for me was the last Poe. And there's one of those tabs you were talking about, one of those pull chains, Sam, where you have to pull the chain and it raises a chandelier, right? And you've done that in a previous room.
Oh, is this one where you have to stand in the middle?
Yes.
Dude, yeah, I had a hard time with that one too.
Yeah. So in a previous room, all you had to do was get the chandelier out of the way and then run underneath of it before it fell down on you. In this room, there's a door at the far end of the room that is too far away for you to jump to, and there's no hook shot grate for you to get over to it. There is a chandelier right in front of it. And you have to pull the chandelier up to get past it. And I spent forever in this room trying to figure out how to get over to that stinking door. And I finally realized that the solution is you have to let the chandelier fall on you while you're standing in the middle, like underneath of it. And there's a hole in the middle of the chandelier, and it basically falls around you. And then once you're inside the chandelier, you can like climb up in it and jump over to the door. Like it gives you enough space to jump over to that door. So that one took me a minute. That was a tricksy little puzzle.
Yeah, that one definitely stumped me as well. I accidentally jumped into the quicksand once, which brought me down to 1 heart, which means I immediately suicided into the quicksand again.
Yeah, right, because you can't have that beeping.
No, it's super annoying.
Yeah. I will say I am really sick of this game dealing 2 hearts damage for falling into a pit.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst part of hero mode for sure.
Yeah, it's not great. The other thing is too, just quicksand in general. I will say one of the things that actually did annoy me sort of frequently about this dungeon is quicksand to me is never fun as a thing you have to deal with in a game. Moving slowly through sand, and especially knowing that if you're in the sand for too long, then you kind of like you fall into it and you lose hearts and you have to go back to the beginning of the room.
And then you throw some of those redeads that scream at you and make you get stuck for a second.
Right, exactly. And actually, let's talk about the redeads and Gibdos for a second, because I feel like their whole scream freeze mechanic is much more frequent in this game than it is in like Ocarina of Time, for instance.
Really? It only happened to me once.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I agree.
You have got to get into, like, I go into every one of these fights swinging away, and the very first time you hit it, it kind of, you can stun lock it. So you swing, jump, swing, it's swing, jump, attack, swing, jump, attack, swing, jump, attack, and it'll eventually die. And like, it will be stun locked to the point where it doesn't even move. Or alternatively, keep at a distance and hit it with 2 bomb arrows and it dies.
Okay.
2 bomb arrows and it's dead ski.
I didn't try bomb arrows. I was probably overthinking this. I was trying to do like combat maneuvers with these things.
Nah, just brute force it, baby.
All right, cool. All right. Regardless, I think that this version of Redead / Gibdo looks amazing.
Oh my gosh. The character design is top tier. Like, yeah. I want these Gibdos in Tears of the Kingdom. I want the Tears of the Kingdom Gibdos to look like this. Yeah. These are scary as hell. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is that there's not a lot of pops of color in this temple in general. There's so much of the beige sand color, but they've got like a red scarf or something.
Yeah.
So they stand out in like a really cool way.
It's fun because, one, I can't remember a time that Gibdos or Redeads had a weapon. Like, these are sword-wielding Redeads.
It is a gigantic sword.
Yeah. Which is really cool. But also, I think the lore of this is pretty fun, because my read on this was you're fighting dead death row inmates right now.
I was thinking it was dead guards.
or that.
Yeah, one or the other. My kind of headcanon here is there was a prison riot, and like that's why it got deserted. Is there was a prison riot, inmates ended up getting control for the most part. The Hyrule royal family just decided to cut their losses, blow up the supply train bridges, cut off access to
Just seal it off.
Yeah, just seal it off, and then
I like
all the prisoners died and became Stalfos.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my read on it.
That could work.
I like it. Speaking of Stalfos, how giddy were you when you realized that the way to defeat the Stalfos was a callback to Link's Awakening?
Yes,
Stalfos
that was really cool. I didn't really realize that at first because I was bomb arrowing everything, so they died in one shot until I just happened to like run into one with my my Beyblade, and it just collapsed, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" And then it came back, and I was like, "Oh, I get it now." And then I had the giddy moment of like, "Oh, that's really cool." Yeah, so I was there.
Cool. Yeah.
I also like the design of these Stalfos a lot too. They have the neat looking shield. They've got the golden pauldrons. They've got a wicked looking sword, green glowing eyes. Like I think these Stalfos look really cool too.
Yeah. So I've got one major thing that I really feel like this dungeon could have done better. And
is it the mites or the ghoul rats?
No, I don't mind. It's not enemy related, but Sam and Matt both. I'm going to let you both take a guess. What do you think my big gripe with this dungeon is?
Sand movement. Sand movement generally sucks.
It's not the ghoul rats. Let's see. I don't know. I guess. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking sand movement, but I'm thinking specifically like the rooms that have like just a few of the like tiles like in the sand that there's nothing really clever about it. It's just like run across some sand, stand on this tile, and then run across some more sand.
That's not my favorite either, but it's not my main thing.
What's your main thing, Lyndon? Tell us.
The music. I really could.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very atmospheric, low key, and almost non-existent, which sucks.
Yeah. I could have used a dungeon theme here, especially coming off of Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time and Desert Temple in A Link Between Worlds, right? I think that this was an area where you could have had a really fun, creepy dungeon theme. And all that you really get is a very low-key kind of a super duper subtle version of what you're talking about, Sam, earlier with someone hitting those vocal keys on the keyboard, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a low key version of maybe the Ocarina Fire Temple music.
Yeah.
You know what it sounded like to me, Matt?
No, tell me.
Sardaukar battle language.
Yeah. Ooh, Dune. Nice. That man. Have we had a Dune reference on the show yet?
If we have, it's been a while.
I love Dune.
Yeah.
That new movie is so good.
We should have been watching Dune Part 2 this last week.
Look, we support the Writers and Actors Guild strikes 100%. We support their right to fair labor, fair and ethical payment for their labor, and protection against AI abuses. But man, it really sucks to not have been seeing Dune this past weekend.
Studio execs, how about you start paying your people appropriately and don't steal their likenesses with AI, and then we can all go watch Dune Part 2.
We can go watch movies again.
I know.
Great.
Freaking buzzkill.
Studios.
So annoying.
I hope they're watching this, listening to this.
The CEO of Warner Brothers International is listening to this podcast. And you know what, sir? To you, I say, I think somebody would have put you in the Arbiter's grounds.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Ouch. I don't know about that, man. I don't think billionaires go to Arbiter's grounds.
You know, well, unless they've killed somebody. Okay, that's fair.
I mean, probably not even then, let's be honest.
You know what happens to them? They become Giovanni. They're so greedy that they get frozen into a golden statue with their cat on their head.
Yeah, no, I in a world where justice exists, let's just say yes.
So not this one?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely could have used a little bit more push from the music here, but it's a very small complaint in a dungeon that is very, very strong aesthetically.
Excellent.
I'm going to open it up. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say about the dungeon before we get into our discussion about the boss?
No, I'm so excited to talk about the boss.
I think the last thing I'm going to say is into aesthetics, the way that the visual language works for where to put the spinner and the gears that are like inside the floor that move the whole temple, like all of that is really cool to me. And it's it feels like one of those ancient Egyptian puzzle boxes that you hear about, or sometimes in pyramids to stop tomb raiders from finding the pharaoh's.
I think that also
chamber.
might have just been in The Mummy. I think you're still just.
That sounds like
No, it's definitely, it's also a real thing. It's definitely a real thing.
I'm trusting you for now.
It's definitely a real thing.
Okay.
But like I really like all of that. I think it's cool, and the visual language of the gears in the floors and moving the wall around with the spinner and all of that. I really, really like it. The visual continuity of the motifs and the cartouches that are around compared to what we kind of saw in the Spirit Temple and Ocarina of Time is really cool. The symbol on all the doors looks like a far more sinister version of the intertwined yin yang Spirit Temple symbol.
Oh yeah,
where they're both pointing up in like kind of horn fashion.
Yeah.
So there's just a really cool continuity of visual language.
You know what?
That I like.
One thing that we actually do need to talk about first. How do we feel about the spinner as an item, just generally?
It's neat enough. I don't remember it being used like ever after this, but I think it is used very, very well in this temple. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, very limited use case for the rest of the game, but I like the zooming around and feeling like you're on like a little thrill ride for a bit.
It's definitely fun when you have puzzles that are tailored exclusively to it.
Yeah.
Like the momentum and everything as you're zooming around on the tracks is a really good time. I wish that it had just a little bit more general use outside of doing that. My recollection of it is that, one, it's basically useless unless there's a rail around.
Correct.
And two, it's used very little after this dungeon.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. I kind of wish that you could like pull out your sword or your bow while you're on a track. Like, I understand why you can't do it when you're on the ground because the balancing and whatnot. But like when you're flying around on the track, that would be kind of cool to be able to pull out your bow and like shoot somebody.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But I get it. It's fine.
Okay. The fantasy of the thing is really stinking cool. Like, it just, you look badass while you're on this thing.
Definitely.
I mean, look, we're not going to use this thing very much more for the rest of the game. So it's good that we're having fun with it now.
Enjoy it while it lasts, ladies and gentlemen, because it doesn't last much longer.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and talk about this dungeon's boss. The boss is Stalord, and it's a 2-phase boss. Phase 1 is in this giant circular room, which looks like it's situated within the main like drum of the Arbiter's Grounds.
Yes.
And for that phase of the fight, Stalord is poking up out of a sand pit. You've got to use the spinner to hit Stalord's vertebrae and break them. And you need to do that 3 times. And it gets progressively harder because there are more and more dead soldiers that are like coming up out of the sand, and they're blocking your ability to get to Stalord's spine.
Yeesh.
The second phase is the sand all drains. It's just Stalord's giant skull. And what you're doing is you're on a series of tracks that rotate around the dungeon, and you're jumping back and forth between tracks, trying to hit Stalord's skull with the spinner in midair so that you can then deal damage to the weak point in the center of the head. So that's the elevator pitch on the fight. Sam, you said that you were really excited to talk about Stalord, so I'm sending this to you.
I think Stalord is, I think he's definitely the best boss in Twilight Princess, and he's up there for the best bosses in Zelda. I think he's just, he's huge. All of the phases are enjoyable, except when you're not doing well, but that's, I consider that a me issue.
That's a skill issue, yeah.
Yeah. But also, like, there's something so satisfying about the second phase and moving so far and taking down an enemy that's so large. The
sense of scale while you're fighting Stalord is definitely very impressive. I feel like we get giant Zelda bosses sometimes. Like I'm thinking of like Bongo Bongo, for
Volvagia
instance, is pretty big. Volvagia actually. Let's get back to Volvagia in a second.
I know.
So Volvagia actually is
much smaller.
That's a boss that I like in my memory was a lot bigger and more impressive. But you actually go fight Volvagia, and she's kind of like, yeah, you're kind of a skinny little
More like
dragon,
a garter
aren't you?
snake. You're like a little garter snake.
Yeah. But we get big bosses sometimes, but it's not. I feel like a lot of those larger Zelda bosses they're pretty distant from you while you're fighting them, right? Like you're having to do ranged combat with like arrows or whatever. Star-Lord, you're like right up in this dude's face, like literally, especially in the back half of the fight. And it's great. He's a giant, imposing boss, and the design is really incredible. One, I just love this arena for one thing.
It's really cool. The place setting for this fight is truly phenomenal. And it starts out, the start of this fight, even before you get into it, with Zant is just there waiting for you. And he's like, hey, cool. So you're still alive. That's pretty neat. You're not about to be. Boom, fight my dragon.
Zant continuing to be really creepy, by the way.
Oh my gosh, dude. I love Zant as a bad guy so far in this game. Like he's just really, really great. He's well done. He's well written.
His Twilight sword looks awesome.
Isn't it so cool? It looks like the Royal Guard greatsword, the black one.
Like I almost feel bad that we destroyed it.
I know. I want it. I want to keep it. Can I have it? I want a has.
You can't have it, Matt.
I can't has.
Yeah.
It's sad.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, no, I think like from the get-go of Zant reanimating this absolutely ginormous dragon it just starts off on such a high note, immediately goes into a fast-paced, frantic feeling fight. You're moving around this arena really, really quickly on your spinner. And then seeing the dead zombie troopers come out of the sand, like it's scary, it's fast, the boss is freaky, it's dark, like all of it just works together so well.
You know what these zombie soldiers look like?
They look like the army of the dead in Return of the King.
Oh, well, yes, but I was yes, they do. But I was thinking they look like claymation skeleton enemies that would be in an old movie. You know, they have that kind of creepy look to them.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good call too. So like it just starts out so good and so fast and really great, and then you have the false win, right? And false wins aren't done a lot in Zelda, and that's a good thing in my opinion. But when they are done, generally speaking, I've seen them done very well. And this is an example of a false win done beautifully.
Yeah.
You know, all the sand drains, very similar to what happened in the water temple when all the water, or the lake bed temple, when all the water drains out, except, you know, in lake bed, the giant eel thing dies. And in this case, you're like, why is the skull not exploding? The skull should be exploding.
There's no heart. Where's the heart?
Where's the heart? Where's my teleportation thingy? And then it's just like, joke's on you. My eyes glow red, and now I'm going to breathe some fire at you. And you're like, oh, sick. And then he just like, and it's even faster the second time. You're moving. It's just the pace is breathless and excellent. I love it.
The second phase of this fight is great because the way that it works is that you've got the central pillar of the arena, and it's set into the ground, and there's a trench that runs in a circle around it. And then the outer wall of the trench has got spinner rails. So there's a spiral spinner rail on the middle pillar.
But then all the ones on the outside are flat. They don't go up.
They're just parallel.
Yeah.
And so basically what you have to do is you have to try and get as high up as you can in order to have enough bounce back and forth room to hit Star-Lord's skull. But the way that you have to do that is you have to be kind of managing where you're at on the outer wall in relation to the spirals of the inner wall.
Yep. Which is really cool, and especially when they start adding the spike traps that go along the rails at you that can knock you off, then you're really having to manage, when am I bouncing back and forth so I'm avoiding the spike trap but still getting elevation? Because every time you bounce to the outer wall and back to the inner wall, you drop in elevation. Yeah. So you're losing ground when you're doing that, and you're having to
also. Yeah. He's breathing fire at you.
Exactly.
In the middle of all this.
So you're dodging spinners, you're dodging fireballs, you're losing elevation, you're trying to gain elevation. Like there's so many things happening
but it's constant movement. Like,
right.
It's never boring. It's so frantic.
And like it's frantic, but not in the way that Mothra was frantic in A Link to the Past.
Well, that's just bullet hell shit.
Right. And so like they managed, but that's my whole point, is they managed to walk the line of frantic movement that isn't just annoyingly frantic.
Although Mothra had spike traps too.
Yeah, but also it had moving tiles.
No,
and
I know.
Mothra was bad. This is good. So I don't know how they walked the line, or I don't know how they found the line, but they found it and they walked it perfectly to where it is frantic and fun instead of frantic and annoying.
Yep.
Really, really good.
Yeah, I completely agree. Sam, this feels like a good moment to talk about the fan canon of Star-Lord. And I'm curious if you know what I'm talking about.
No.
Matt?
I be worried about this?
I do know what you're talking about.
I don't think you should be worried. I think that by the time
it's not Rule 47 worrying, no.
No.
It's not. No shipping is happening.
No. No, it's not Rule 47.
We're shipping Star-Lord with Morpheal, I guess. No.
Oh,
Ew.
great.
Ew.
Is this related to, just because I kept thinking about this when looking at Star-Lord earlier today, is this related to the barbarian armor at all? Okay, so just FYI, Star-Lord looks a lot like the barbarian armor helmet in Tears of the Kingdom.
Ooh, it
good
does.
Call.
Yeah, I never realized that.
But I don't know if that's intentional or not. But okay, but I don't know what the fan canon is here.
All right,
so
Lyndon, I'll let you do the honors since you brought it up.
So the fan canon that I've seen online for years, and of course there's no official confirmation of this, but it just works so well that it's my personal canon for this boss. The fan theory is that this is actually just the reanimated skeleton of Volvagia. And there's a few different things that sort of all feed into this. And of course, it wouldn't be the same Volvagia that we fought in Ocarina of Time, because that was in the adult timeline, which is notably not what we're in right now. We're in the child timeline here. But the way that I've always seen this kind of theorized online is that this version of Volvagia, it was never reanimated by Ganondorf in the adult timeline. It never went back to Death Mountain, but its remains were held in the Arbiter's grounds. Mm-hmm. And that version is the one that we're kind of fighting, the reanimated one that we're fighting here. There's a few different things that feed into that. One, the skull just looks straight up like Volvagia.
Just way bigger.
Yeah, just way bigger, but you have to give some allowance for...
absolutely.
Yeah, so the skull looks very similar to Volvagia's skull with the horns and just the general shape and everything. It's a big old dragon, right? So there's that. But also the fact that the Volvagia boss theme music plays for the second phase of this fight, which... I love that boss theme so much. It's got just such big like chariot race, like get hyped, let's go boys, bum 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 bum. Yeah. It's great. I love that boss music so much. And look, was this intended by Nintendo? Probably not. I don't know. But no one's telling me that it's not correct, and so I'm choosing to believe that that this is what's going on here.
And also, it would make sense to move the remains of the deadliest dragon in Hyrule's history into the most secure place in Hyrule, where a dark sorcerer that tried to take over the kingdom wouldn't be able to reanimate it. So I think that also works out logically, canonically. So and it has its own inner chamber. That's why this inner chamber exists, to hold the potentially most dangerous thing in Hyrule.
It's headcanon, but it's fun headcanon.
I like it, and I think it's Sacred Realms canon. So we're going to stamp that.
Boom. There you
go.
We're going to stamp it with one of the many completely useless Hyrule letter stamps that we've been collecting in this.
I want to throw my Wii U out a window every time I open a chest, and it's one of those damn stamps.
I hate when I've spent 10 minutes trying to get to that chest.
Yes.
I'm always like, it's going to be a heart piece. It's going to be 100 rupees. Nope. It's a stamp for the Hylian letter N. And by the way, you can't use those anymore because the online services are shut down. And also, I don't think anyone was ever using them in the first place.
Yeah, no, it's
I actually,
so
you know what? I used Miiverse, and I don't think I ever used any of the stamps at all. I don't think I even knew how to use them.
So, like, if you, as a person who was actually hooked into that online system, didn't even get around to messing with it, then I can't believe that this was the
they
thing
gave
that
you
people
so
were-
many in any of the games that they gave them to you. Like, how many posts are you making on Miiverse? Like, I don't know. And some of them are like, here's a sad Midna stamp, or I don't know, all the different emotions of the main characters. And
I got a sad Midna this week, and I felt very sad Midna when I got it. So it was appropriate.
because it wasn't a heart piece.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or 100 rupees.
Uh-huh.
I want that magic armor.
It's so funny, Sam. I actually just saw your tweet from earlier tonight where you're like, I miss the Miiverse.
That's what had me thinking about it. I was thinking about the stamps. I was literally thinking about Twilight Princess HD, and about how many stamps there were. Like, literally, that was my thought process. And then I posted on social media that I miss Miiverse, which I do, but I don't miss the stamps, to be clear. I don't think that they were an integral part of Miiverse.
Just out of curiosity, what was like, I'm not even familiar with Miiverse very much. What was like the main use case for that?
So I would say, well, okay, there's two main use cases. One would be the functional use case, which is if you were stuck somewhere in a game, you could post like a screenshot of where you were, and somebody could be like, "Oh, that's look up to the right" or whatever. I don't know how helpful those people were, but also I think for me the best use case was just art in general. There were a lot of really good artists on there, and there would be like people posting art challenges, or draw your self-portrait, or draw a picture of Bowser. Like, just there was a lot of really cool art, and sometimes there was just funny posts in general.
And now it's all gone forever.
It's gone forever. But I just think it was a cool like option to have available to open up at any given point in time and see what people are. What's the top post on like the Animal Crossing board right now on Miiverse? Something like that.
There's an alternate universe somewhere where Nintendo has successfully implemented online ecosystems and people use them with some regularity.
There's a universe where there's a functional Miiverse, there's Street Pass, there's themes on our Switch. Also, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD are on the Switch.
Themes on the Switch. Now you're just talking crazy. That's never happening.
Well, at this point, no, it's not.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Do we have anything else we want to say about Star-Lord before we get out of the dungeon map?
I'm good.
Feeling good? Awesome.
No.
Cool. Arbiter's Grounds, just to put a pin in this discussion, fair to say, just excellent, right? Just really...
Oh, yeah, man. This is one of the best Zelda dungeons of all time.
This is my favorite desert dungeon in any Zelda game.
Oh, man. It's top 3, top 2. It's top 2.
How about you, Sam?
I think favorite desert dungeon is probably accurate for me too. It's up there. I would go as far to say it's probably top 5 overall dungeon wise for me, but I'd have to do like a real deep dive.
Yeah, that's a big old question to answer for sure, but cool. Spectacular regardless. All right, let's get into part 4, which is Bloopy Trails, where we talk about interesting things that diverted our attention this week. Matt, I'm going to throw to you first.
I did a couple more bloopy trails. I did most of mine last week. I did the star collecting game in Hyrule Castle Town.
In the circus.
I got the big quiver.
I did that too.
I got another full heart container. So as of the end of this dungeon, I'm starting my second row of hearts. I think that is about it because, like I said, I did most of mine last week.
Okay. So I did 2 this week that I have never done in Twilight Princess before. This is my 3rd time playing this game, and I have never before done the star collecting circus minigame. Didn't even know it existed. And I had also never done the river boat ride minigame. And I did that this week as well. The star collecting circus minigame I actually thought was pretty fun because I did that 3 times and got really frustrated with it before I realized, oh, you're supposed to use the claw shot to cheese this thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that made it a lot more fun because then it just become about finding the best paths with the claw shot to get multiple of those shiny blinky lights all at the same time. Yep. And so this to me was actually a really fun mini game, and I'm gonna go seek it back out later. The quest giver, not the quest giver, the NPC, I don't know his name, who kicks this whole thing off, the ringleader.
He's dressed like Tingle.
Yeah, exactly. Says that he's going to set it back up and it's going to be harder. And
you have to go back with the double claw shot.
That's kind of what I assumed. And so I'm going to go check it back out again once I have that. The boat riding minigame to me was fun in theory.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
I like that we're back in this space. You know, like this is the third time we've been here. We rode the bird in Twilight when the river wasn't flowing, right?
Yep.
And then did we ride the bird again in Twilight?
You can if you do so there's another mini game where you have to talk to the parrot as Wolf Link. And you can ride a Kargarok up, and it's a balloon popping mini game.
Gotcha.
I tried to do that one like 3 or 4 times and failed. And I was like, I don't like this enough to keep trying.
Yeah. For me, the issue is the boat controls just suck.
Yeah, they're horrible.
Like trying to drive this boat is really frustrating, and I didn't like it.
But you don't have to do well on this minigame to get the bomb bag.
Which is the only reason that I went and did it.
Yeah,
and
that's all you have to do. I don't know. I think if you do it perfectly, you get like a piece of art or something. But like, honestly, not worth it.
I was going to say, I don't know if that piece of heart is worth it to me to go and do this again.
These controls are horrible.
Yeah. So I did both of those 2 things. I actually did so we've talked about Fire already, the Cannon Master, right? Mm-hmm. But I also did Falby's Cuckoo riding minigame.
I did that one last week.
To get to the Fantastic Treasure Island.
And you get the 100 rupees and the piece of heart and then 20 and then 50 rupees and then 20 rupees.
Which I really like this minigame because if you do it right the first time, then you never have to do it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dunsky.
But also be sure to do it at night because there's
a Poe.
Yeah, there's a Poe over there on one of the mid levels. And
yeah, I didn't do it at night and I need to go redo it to get that Poe.
I got to redo it, man.
I know. It's fine.
I did it during the day, but I had seen the Poe over there already. So what I decided to do was just like chill until night came and then went and got the Poe. And I'm happy in that decision.
You know, it's times like these that I miss the Majora's Mask time mechanic where I could just zoom myself to night or day.
Oh, God, I know, right? So handy. But then the other thing, we haven't been talking about the Hero Shade combat stuff much at all. But the one that we did this week, I don't know what the song is. It's escaping me.
One of them is
I'm talking about the one that spawns the wolf at the entrance to the Arbiter's grounds.
Well, I don't... So I think that you get a different song based on how many you've done. I don't think it's tied to a certain stone.
Oh,
I don't know that for sure. I think
I'm pretty sure it's tied to certain stones.
Either way, I did 2 stones. One of them I didn't recognize at all. One of them was the light song that transports you to the Temple of Time.
Yeah, it definitely was not that one. I would have recognized that one.
What is that one called? Elegy of Light?
Prelude of Light.
Prelude, yeah. One of them is the Prelude of Light that I did. And the other one I totally didn't recognize.
But I love the technique that you get from this one. It's the final draw, right?
I actually didn't complete this one.
Really?
I didn't go get the wolf.
Okay,
I sang the song, but I didn't go get the wolf.
So the final draw is a really fun combat ability where you can't be Z-targeting the enemy and your sword has to be put away. And when the enemy gets close to you, you draw the sword and just like slam this enemy in the face with it. And it's really cool. It's a really cool animation. And yeah, I really like using it. Sam, I know you have not been playing this game week to week the same way that we have, but do you have any side quests in this game that just generally stick out to you as being really fun?
Long-term side quest, but I'm very pro Princess Agatha. I love those little golden bugs. Yeah. I think she gives you good rewards, but also like there's something about, it's like the Skulltulas. Like there's something about being somewhere and you hear like the little twinkling sound effect and you're like, oh, where's that bug? I got to find it.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that.
I did a lot of collecting golden bugs this week because I was trying to get money to do the Mallow Mart expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so, yeah, I was kind of looking around for all of those. But I have a question about Agatha. Where are her parents?
Yeah, I'm just assuming she's a super rich orphan.
Raised by the bugs.
The bugs are my family.
That's funny.
She's like Bruce Wayne if Bruce Wayne was in like Ren Fair times and also had
a bug fanatic.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I looked this up and I was correct. It's the songs are in order of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I hate it when you're correct.
I know. The songs are Song of Healing, Requiem of Spirit, Prelude of Light, Zelda's Lullaby, Song of Heroes, and The Wind Waker.
What is the Song of Heroes?
I don't know what the Song of Heroes is.
That's probably the one that you heard.
I
don't know what that is.
I have no recollection of that. Okay. More research is required. All right, let's move into part 5, which is Z targeting, where we lock on to fascinating characters or enemies that we happen to cross. Let's see. My Z targeting pick for this week is going to be the War Pigs.
It's a good one.
Because they're a wonderful, useful little character, and I think they're horribly misunderstood.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Actually, okay, hold on. Upon further investigation, a different website is saying that it is tied to the stone. So, unsure. The internet is unsure.
Okay.
The internet is unsure.
The internet is usually so reliable.
Whatever. Okay, Z targeting. My Z targeting pick is going to be Death Sword. Mostly because crazy cool character design. We don't often pick enemies. We mostly try to pick characters who we, have some emotional connection to or are just funny or interesting. But this is one of the coolest design enemies in any Zelda game. It's a really good mini boss fight. The set dressing for this mini boss fight is one of the best at instilling a sense of dread and a fear of like what's about to happen. The mechanics of switching back and forth between Wolf Link and Human Link, even though it only happens once, like it was a really cool and unique thing that, obviously only Twilight Princess could do. So I think kudos, props, et cetera, to Death Sword.
Awesome. And Sam, you get the option of picking pretty much any character that we've met up until this point in the game for your Z targeting. So
I'm so glad.
That's a lot of people.
I'm going to pick a character that I forgot existed until today. When I was just looking up some pictures from Castletown, and I was so excited when I saw. I'm going to pick Gengal, who you may or may not remember. He may be reintroduced shortly in Castletown, but Gengal's one of the cats, leader of the cats, and I love Gengal.
I have not met Gengal yet, but the title Leader of the Cats is fantastic.
That's all you need to know.
I'm a cat person, and I really want to go meet Gengal now.
Yeah. Isn't Gengal Giovanni's cat?
He is?
Yeah, Gengal's Giovanni's cat. The one that's on his head.
Okay, well, I am so much more invested in saving Giovanni now, just because, honestly...
All for Gengal.
Yes, Gengal does not deserve being stuck to Giovanni's head for the rest of eternity.
I think that's totally fair.
That's how I feel
you
got
to get those postals.
All right. Well, first stop after the desert is going to be to go free Gengal.
Yeah, we got to free Gengal.
It's very important. Gengal sounds like a good cat. Oh, did you hear that? I think we got a coyote out there.
Oh, is that what that is?
No, I think it's just a neighbor dog.
We do have coyotes, like they.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we got to protect the pup deucer then,
dude, and bobcats.
Those bobcats are more dangerous than the coyotes. They will definitely get the pup deucer.
Yeah, no kidding. The pup deucer's inside. He doesn't get to come out to the garage.
He's safe.
Yeah, he's fine. All right. Well, let's move into part 6, which is our final thoughts, where we let Matt wrap up this section of the game in as succinct a way as he can think to do.
We come off of our interlude of semi-easier gameplay into another really chock-full section of game with some excellent set pieces and one of the best dungeons in all of 3D Zelda. We start our adventure through Hyrule Castletown and get introduced to a new and interesting cast of characters in the White Lotus of Hyrule, and we get to go back to Lake Hylia to meet the final member of the White Lotus in Aru, who sets us on our path into the Gerudo Desert, which is a vast and somewhat empty set piece for us. But moving into the Bokoblin camp and all of the combat encounters there was truly wonderful and fun, exciting experience. Into the Arbiter's Grounds, which is, as I said, one of the best dungeons in all of 3D Zelda, culminating in a truly fun, frantic, fast-paced, and phenomenal boss fight. Looking forward to next week where we get to talk about some deep lore for the game and moving on into the back half of our secondary MacGuffin.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm sure a lot of you noticed that we did not tackle any of the cutscene happenings after we exit the Arbiter's grounds, after we beat the boss. That's going to be happening next week, and boy, are we going to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot. That's going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, can't wait. Well done, as always, Matt. You're always great at wrapping up this section of the game in as succinct a way as you can think to do.
Which is not succinct very anymore.
This brings us to the end of the Sacred Realms Rundown. We will, of course, be back with another installment of the Sacred Realms Rundown next week. So tune in. It's going to be a very fun conversation. Sam, it has been great having you on tonight. We really appreciate you coming back around to talk about Twilight Princess with us. I mean, do you have anything big coming up soon? I mean, I don't even really know too much what you're up to these days.
You know, the funny thing is I do have something really big coming up, and I'm not allowed to talk about it.
No.
Sweet.
You'll just have to, I guess, watch my social media.
And where would where would those be?
Nintendofangirl and everything. Also, there's like a ton of Nintendo releases coming out through the end of the year, so I'm keeping busy with that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like things might be heating up in the not too distant future. I mean, I know that Switch 2 rumors have been kind of floating around for a very long time, but it feels like that's actually getting pretty close now.
My hunch, honestly, is that we're not going to hear anything about officially anything about Switch 2 until sometime next year. But I do think we're going to get at least one more direct before the end of the year. We're going to get more news. We still have games that are coming out next year that haven't been shown off yet. So, there's stuff on the horizon.
Definitely one or two things still left to play on the Switch before it rides off into the sunset and becomes something else. But yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what all goes on there. And we will definitely be keeping it locked to your socials to, get the resolution of this wonderful tease and find out what cool things Sam gets to go do.
I hope it's worth it.
I feel like it probably will be. But either way, thanks so much for joining us for this conversation. It's been a really great time, and have no idea what we're playing after this. We're going to be, well, you know what? That's actually a good question, Matt. Are we bouncing to another top-down game, or are we going to do the thing that we've been threatening to do and start slotting in Zelda likes in a rotating cadence along with the other stuff we haven't played yet?
I don't know. Maybe we put it up to a vote.
Yeah, we should probably let people vote on that. I wouldn't mind playing like Tunic or something before we go do another.
I mean, I think it should still be a top-down Zelda-like, so something like Hyper Light Drifter. But
oh man, I'm always down to go play Hyper Light Drifter.
I've never played it, so I'm looking forward to when we do, inevitably, because we've committed. We have committed to keeping the pod going.
We have committed, and inserting a Zelda-like means that it's going to be even longer before we have to play Spirit Tracks. So,
and that's always a good thing.
But you know what? We've still got Oracles, we've got Minish Cap. There's a lot of good stuff still hanging out there.
Knowing our luck, our community is going to vote that we play Spirit Tracks next.
They're just not that mean.
I mean, Josh is.
He is. That's fair. All right. But regardless, Sam, hope to catch up with you sometime soon. And this has been a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and get out of here, call it a week, and button this thing up until we meet again next time. If you enjoyed today's show and you'd like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/Sacred Realms Pod and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it is not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show. That makes us very happy Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind-the-scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our thoughts on Twilight Princess Chapter 7. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels. Twilight Princess can be played in its original form on either the Nintendo GameCube or the Nintendo Wii. The HD remaster can be played on the Nintendo Wii U, and any of those versions of the game can be emulated in a variety of places, but please don't do that unless you legally own the copy of the game that you're emulating. But in the meantime, may your hearts be full, may your arrows never miss. We'll catch y'all next time. Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.